Hello.
Yes,
Okay, how are you doing, Ms. Davis?
I'm fine. Thank you very much this morning. How about you?
I'm doing fine.
All right. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Today we are present for the HUD's Housing, Urban Development and Zoning Committee meeting for January 26, 2023. Madam Clerk, I'm calling this meeting to order. Would you please call the roll?
Alderman Cone, Alderman Kotar, Alderwoman Boyd,
Present.
Alderman Gunther,
Here.
Alderman Narayan,
Here.
Alderman Todd,
Present.
Alderwoman Evans,
Present.
Alderwoman Peel,
Here.
Alderman Gross, Alderman Lappy, Alderwoman Keys,
Here.
Alderwoman Walker,
Present.
Chair Davis,
I'm present. I'm sorry, I'm reading too.
President Green,
Present.
Alderman Cone, Alderman Kotar, Alderman Gross, Alderman Lappy. We have 10 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, do we have minutes to approve?
Yes, we have minutes from January 19th.
The chair will accept a motion for the minutes.
So moved.
It's been moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Cone, Alderman Kotar, Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Gunther,
Aye.
Alderman Narayan, Alderman Todd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Evans,
Aye.
Alderwoman Peel, Alderman Gross, Alderman Lappy, Alderwoman Keys,
Aye.
Alderwoman Walker,
Aye.
Chair Davis,
Aye.
President Green,
Aye.
Alderman Cone, Alderman Kotar, Alderman Narayan,
Aye.
Alderwoman Peel,
Aye.
Alderman Gross, Alderman Lappy,
Aye.
11 aye votes.
Madam Clerk, we have the president of the board. Anytime the president of the board is sitting in on a meeting, we do ask for the vote. It's an automatic assumption that that's a member of the committee.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Where are we at? Okay, so what I'd like to do is to I'll share a couple of things before we get started. We only have 5 board bills before us today, but I know 2 of them probably will take a long time. And what I'd like to do is to ask those who are present, who are guest speakers, to please keep their mics muted. And Madam Clerk, if you hear too much background, you can automatically mute all guest speakers except staff.
Yes, ma'am.
We also wanted to make sure that we understand that we do not debate guest speakers. We will not have any back and forth. We will listen because that's what we are here for, is to hear the public. So we will not debate, we will not ask questions, and we will not make statements against what a public citizen has offered in a public hearing. So with that, I would like to go ahead and move forward with our first board bill that is listed here, which is Board Bill 64.
Board Bill number 64, introduced by Alderman Shane Cone, Alderman Dan Gunther, Alderman Bill Stevens, and President Green. An ordinance approving policies and procedures in connection with the consideration of development proposals, amending ordinance number 71504 and containing a servability and emergency clause.
Thank you very much. Alderman Cohen, would you like to open on your board bill, please?
Alderman Cone
I thought I heard him.
has
You
not
know,
joined.
I mix him and that voice, Coder's voice up all the time. Okay,
He just texted me that he's trying to get on.
is there some way we can help him in a few seconds or something?
Let me see.
I'm here.
Okay.
I've been on, but like the link that SLTV sent me did not allow me to be a panelist for whatever
Oh.
reason.
Okay, well, we sometimes have mistakes.
I know so I had to join from my phone here.
All right, sir. Whenever
Okay.
you're ready, we read your preamble already. And if you'd like to go ahead and open.
Sure, thank you. So Board Bill 64, hold on, I'm trying to open it up here on my computer. We previously discussed this board bill, and I mentioned at the time that I was planning on moving forward with a committee substitute. I do have the committee substitute filed with the clerk's office, so it should be in everyone's folder at this point in time. But Board Bill 64, I introduced at the right around the beginning of summer last year, right before we went down for summer recess, to address some of the ongoing challenges that we've had with processes over at SLDC and just transparency with respect to our incentive process. And so during our last meeting where we discussed this, I did kind of walk through the different sections here. And I would like to make a motion that we put the committee substitute before the committee.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll? Wow.
I'm sorry. Alderman Cone,
Aye.
Alderman Kotar,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Gunther,
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderman Todd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Evans,
Aye.
Alderwoman Peel, Alderman Gross,
Aye.
Alderman Lappy,
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys,
Aye.
Alderwoman Walker,
Aye.
Chair Davis,
Aye.
President Green,
Aye.
Alderwoman Peel,
Aye.
14 aye votes.
Thank you. We have approved your committee substitute to be added to your board bill. If you'd like to have some discussion for us for further understanding.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the committee substitute that's before us cleans up some of the language that's in the definitions here. And we did get input from the city councilor's office, the attorneys, the city councilor that represents SLDC, and some additional feedback from folks within the administration, the mayor's office, that we've tried to incorporate along with conversations that the president's office has had with members of this body and also various stakeholders. So we've tried to make certain amendments to the initial board bill through this committee substitute that reflect those conversations. And so I'll just kind of walk through some of these updates here. So we got feedback from, if you look at, I believe it's page 3 of the board bill, we struck the city councilor's office as it pertains to conflict of interest and disclosures. We got feedback from the city councilor's office that the state statutes kind of supersede any of the decision-making authority for ethics and conflict of interest and whatnot, and that each of the independent bodies over at SLDC, so the LCRA, LRA, et cetera, each have their own ethics process that they go through. I sit on the Planning Commission, and they have their own conflict of interest form that they have each of the commissioners complete. And so basically we're changing that language so that it's not the responsibility of the city councilor's office, but each of the respective decision bodies, legal counsel, to work on maintaining the conflict of interest disclosure certification and that process associated with it. We did remove the Board of Adjustment and LRA from the decision-making body definition. They appear later with respect to the letters of support, but they are not actually part of the incentive process and decision-making body. So we removed them from that definition. And similarly, we removed property sales from development proposals because that's typically not something that SLDC would see. That's something that goes through LRA. Moving on to page 4, we are adding language with respect to in the committee substitute. This there's an amendment that we'll discuss later about this, but in the committee substitute, we did add language with respect to labor harmony agreements. In addition to that, there's some minor grammatical changes down there. Page 5, we removed property sales, again, kind of related to them not being part of an incentive process. That's a separate process that goes through the LRA, and that is addressed later with the letters of support section. And then section 2, which starts on page 6, there's just some kind of cleaning up of language, and we did remove notifications that are sent directly to the chairperson of Housing and Urban Development, because right before that, it says it's sent to the Board of Aldermen. The chairperson of Housing and Urban Development is a member of the Board of Aldermen, so we just removed that specific requirement. And then also added language on page 7 with respect to HUD's or its equivalent committee. Part of that is because we are reducing the size of the alder people, and we don't know what committees will look like in the future. So wanted to add that language in there. And then also wanted to have a specific time frame that these reports should be made available instead of just saying simultaneously. So we tried to be consistent with a 48-hour requirement for these things. Excuse me. So section 3, which is the incentive review policy and procedures, we added that the report should be created and provided by SLDC. And then we also put the requirement onto the applicant for projects that are over $10 million in terms of going through that public input process. Many of the developers that come before us do community outreach or reach out to neighborhoods in some form or fashion before they approach SLDC with respect to the development project that they're working on. So it didn't make a lot of sense to have SLDC responsible for the public outreach component before someone puts in an application. So we cleaned that up a little bit and basically, put the onus back on the applicant, which they're largely already doing that before they come to SLDC. Moving through to page 9, we are adding language that if the applicant requests tax incentives for a development proposal, that includes at least one retail establishment that will have more than 10 employees or a hotel. This is all part of the kind of labor harmony aspect of it, which again, I'll address through an amendment a little bit later. And then we also added signed conflict of interest disclosure certifications by SLDC and any departmental staff persons involved in preparing a development proposal report. So essentially requiring that those conflict of interest are also not by just board members, but also staff that are working on the reports themselves. Moving on, page 11, when a member of the Board of Aldermen submits a draft board bill for introduction of a development proposal to the clerk, the development proposal will be included as an exhibit. So just making sure that once we have SLDC providing these reports as a condition of going through the incentive process over here at the Board of Aldermen, that it's attached as an exhibit to the board bill. Jumping ahead a couple pages, page 13, we're removing the language around the MVA, just because that's already going to be incorporated into the development assessment process that SLDC is developing for these projects. And then, hold on, my computer's freezing up on me. And then also adding language that SLDC should hold at least annually a public accessible training regarding its requirements and policies that govern redevelopment agreements. So jumping ahead to section 4, and this is really one of the sections that I think has gotten a lot of the public interest, which is the letters of support. And, you know, historically, alder people are approached by either SLDC or developer about a project and are asked to provide letters of support. I know each alder person handles that slightly differently, but this provides a bit of a more standardized process for providing those letters of support. It doesn't prohibit them, it doesn't restrict them, it doesn't require them either in order for a development to move forward. But it does, and there's an exhibit that has an example of the letter that would be provided by an alder person. But essentially it's removing the aldermanic discretion, I suppose, in terms of recommending to SLDC the length, duration, or amount of incentive that should be provided to a project. It is simply stating that the alderperson has, you know, basically worked with their community and would support said project. And this is where the real estate transactions and LRA become relevant again. So we did add LRA back into, specifically added them into this area because they were removed from the first section pertaining to incentives. Section C of section 3 or section 4, we did remove or affinity for anyone within a 4th degree of sanguinity or affinity. That language seems, you know, rather broad. You know, affinity can mean a heck of a lot of different relationships there. So, you know, kind of hard to manage that. But at the end of page 18, we did strike that letters of support shall include the following certification of alder people, because that was a little bit redundant because it's already, you know, kind of spelled out elsewhere. And then moving on to the next page, page 19. So we struck the kind of, if signed electronically, the kind of signature that would be used by an alderperson if it's signed electronically. That did seem redundant as well, since it already says that letters of support may be signed manually or electronically. And then added, who shall attach the letter of support to an exhibit to ensure it's publicly accessible and maintained by the city or SLDC. Just to make sure that, we've got a variety of websites that the city uses and SLDC uses. And, for instance, we also use YouTube to post meeting conversations and recordings and whatnot. So this just broadens that language a little bit to be able to include all of the publicly accessible websites. And then we struck section 5 at the request of the city councilor, and section 6, which was with respect to some of the ARPA spending at the request, I believe, of the clerk when this was first introduced. They said that that language should not be included because it's not germane to the rest of the bill and the incentive reform component. So we struck both of those sections from the board bill. And then section 5, section 6 were just updated because we struck those sections out, but it's a severability and emergency clause. And then the various exhibits that are attached, are the conflict of interest disclosure certification with some minor changes there. The form letter of support is also included in that. And with that, I would entertain any questions from the committee.
You're muted, Chair Davis.
Thank you. Before we go to committee, I just wanted to get something clarified. Did you indicate, excuse me, did you indicate that the board, if the Board of Aldermen has prepared an incentive bill, it shall be attached to, because I don't know why we would even be doing that. That's not what we should be doing.
The development report from SLDC would be attached to a board bill that's filed with the clerk, is what this says.
Okay, because it didn't come out that way.
Okay, sorry, but
right.
that would be the requirement, is that a development report that's prepared by SLDC would be filed as an exhibit with the board bill when it's filed for introduction.
Okay, very good. That's what in my mind, I figured that's what it meant, but it didn't come out that way. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Chair Davis, we do have 3 speakers in regard to Board Bill 64.
Yeah, I just saw that. So if you like, if you can call their names, we'd like to ask them to open their mic. I will swear them in, and you can keep the time for us, and we can get those three speakers taken care of.
Jameson Ramirez,
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Jerry Conley,
Jerry.
Crystal George.
Hello.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. If you all would please allow me to swear you in, and you can just say your name with your affirmative. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in this hearing?
Affirmative.
I, James Ramirez, affirm that.
All right. Okay,
Jerry
I think
Connolly, affirmative.
Thank you. So who's listed first, Madam Chair?
Jameson Ramirez, Ramirez.
Mr. Ramirez, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning to you all, President Green, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to address you all this morning as it relates to Board Bill 64. My name is Jameson Ramirez. As I stated earlier, I'm the strategic researcher for the Service Employees International Union Local 1 here in St. Louis. SEIU Local 1 proudly represents over 46,000 working people in 6 states and 11 cities across the Midwest, including, I would add, over 2,700 essential workers here in St. Louis. I would like to state that on behalf of SEIU Local 1, I voice our support for Board Bill 64. We believe that Board Bill 64 can bring greater accountability to economic development in the city. Such economic development is vitally important for bringing growth and prosperity, but we cannot forget that bringing accountability to the process of that development is equally important. Such accountability will help ensure that investment in our neighborhoods and communities works to the benefit of all, and this includes workers like our members. It's my hope that this committee will view favorably the merits of the bill and give it a due pass recommendation so that ultimately good policies go to work for our workers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, who's next?
Jerry Conley.
Mr. Conley, please move forward with your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, President Green, members of the committee, and other aldermen present today. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on Board Bill 64. I did address some comments to this committee at its first hearing back in December. And one of my concerns is regarding the list of entities or decision-making bodies that still do not include some of the development boards housed at SLDC. My understanding this focus here is on entities that actually allocate or are involved in the authorization process for incentives. Although it might not come out of actual city funds, the Clean Energy Development Board is not included in this provision, nor is the Industrial Development Authority. And the Industrial Development Authority, basically, they conduct hearings on projects and the board members aren't even present at the hearings. And I think those boards need to be included in the transparency for having those meetings uploaded on YouTube and streamed. And why has that been omitted? Because I provide some feedback on this bill, a couple of months ago, and clearly somebody at the city council's level or SLDC, the Board of Aldermen, Mayor's office, whoever, does not want all these entities to be included. So that's a grave concern. There is language in here regarding additional review being needed if there's a change to the project. And we've seen that relatively recently with development projects last year, where there was substantial changes to the nature of the project. There was changes to the terms of the tax abatement. And when those changes are made, it does need to come back before the Board of Aldermen and back to the relevant development board. The voice of the people and elected officials is very important in this process. And a particular concern recently has been when an Alderwoman Peel has appeared at the city's LCRA board on 2 occasions. The LCRA commissioners and SLDC staff have not actually responded to questions she's raised. So although, we've seen we've got an economic justice plan, we've got community engagement processes being laid out with the new scorecard from SLDC, if our duly elected officials, are not being responded to at these meetings, that is very seriously concerning. And I think that's something that, the members of this body on the committee really should take into consideration on this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Crystal George.
Ms. George, you may start.
Hello and good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Crystal George. I'm with Unite Here Local 74. Unite Here Local 74 does approve this bill. We do support this. There's not much, just like I said, with going over this bill, we approve this. So very short and sweet.
Thank you very much.
Ma'am.
Okay. Madam Clerk, that's the end of our speakers list.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I'd like to go to the committee members for their questions or concerns. So I will, I'll start with, well, it's Alderman Cohn's bill. So I'll start with Alderman Coder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Alderman, you alluded that there might be an amendment relating to labor harmony agreements. I was hoping you could expand on sort of what that amendment is. Because and then kind of clarify in this labor harmony section. See the definition.
If I could maybe interrupt you, Alderman.
No, can I finish my question? On page 9, where you referenced 10 employees, is that full-time employees? So if you could, 1, expand on what your amendment would be, and 2, explain to me what's an employee. Is that a full-time equivalent? You know, what is 10 employees? If it's a small retail establishment with a number of part-time employees, would that fall under this agreement? Thanks.
So the labor harmony agreement's actually being removed by the amendment. So we did get feedback from the folks in the labor universe that there's other language that we should be using to that extent. So it's being stricken. So that
Great.
should answer both of your questions.
That does. All right, we can move along then. Thanks. I guess then my next question goes to this discussion of site specific. Well, I guess I'm on page 11 where you're talking about, what is this? We're talking about development proposals, and then I guess what could these letters of support? Oh wait, sorry, wrong page. Oh, you clarified 11 with. Okay, actually no. On page 11, you're talking about this. The development proposal must be as an exhibit, like so on a say a chapter 99, for example, a fairly routine tax abatement. Would the redevelopment agreement, is that what you're contemplating, or is there something beyond that for this development proposal?
No, it would for a chapter 99 blighting, which is usually kind of the first step in, either a tax abatement or what have you, it would be included with the board bill that's submitted to the clerk. So SLDC would work on the development proposal report, and then it would be submitted with the board bill at introduction.
Okay.
As an exhibit.
So this would be, it would be an additional exhibit. So there'd be the redevelopment plan, and then I guess some additional report that SLDC is going to put together.
Correct.
And that
along with the report would have like letters of support. It would have conflict of interest forms. So the report would have, a little bit more additional information than the development plan would otherwise have.
Okay. So this site specific development approvals, which is it looks like a pretty broad definition. The definition's on page 5, and then my question pertains to page 17. I guess this seems so site specific development approvals, we're sort of lumping a lot in here: rezoning, variances, conditional use, and then in the definition, and then in this letters of support. I mean, I want to make sure I'm understanding this. Are you saying that an alderman, and I won't even be here, so this won't impact me, but it seems to me that what we're proposing would really limit for the freedom of speech of elected officials and their ability to speak on projects and advocate for their community. I mean, based on how I'm reading this, basically I can, as an elected official, say whether I support a project or not in the form you've provided, and nothing beyond that, or subject myself to fines. And it doesn't appear you can you can weigh in on the variance, a conditional use, or any conditions on those things, which are used all the time, as conditions to certain types of operations, gas stations and things. I mean, as written, you can't advocate or take a position on conditions relating to, I guess, a variance or a conditional use. Is that your intent?
So that is not the intent with respect. So this is respective of development projects that are happening. But I do hear the concern with respect to the definition that includes some of the languages with respect to variance rezoning. So I am certainly open to looking at that a little bit further and possibly adding an amendment around that if it needs to be further defined.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it does.
That's
I mean,
not, but that is not the intent, is because obviously conditions at zoning are important when dealing with our constituents and their concerns.
Yeah, I mean, but as written, it would appear to me that's what you've done is limit an alderman's ability to advocate for, particular uses within a development, which I don't think is what you're intending, but it's what we've done here. And then I think more broadly, I guess I take issue. I understand the concern with what some of our previous colleagues have done and some of the letters they've written. And I like that, letters and our correspondence with these departments, that's going to be more public. I think that's fine. But I still am just sort of scratching my head as to why we're legislating away future aldermen's ability to advocate for or against projects, or to make specific. If you have someone with the wherewithal and the background to make an informed decision about a level of incentive, and they want to voice their opinion, you're basically making it a criminal conduct to do so, and that's not something I can support. And I wouldn't want my future representatives, I guess, handcuffed, by some cookie cutter form letter that you've proposed here.
Well, to be clear, the letter is provided on the kind of from the offset of the development. We still have a legislative process that all of these things need to go through, and there's like input from the alder people during that process with respect to the incentives, and those are public hearings as we're having right now, where we're on the record with respect to our thoughts, and all of that, but we're not. What this is doing is essentially saying, from the beginning of the development project, we are allowing SLDC to go through their process in terms of evaluating a project and making recommendations with respect to incentives. And then it would come before this body where we can accept those recommendations, we can amend those recommendations, but this is specifically to initiating that process and providing a letter of support at the very onset of it.
But I guess, am I missing something here, Alderman? You're specifically saying that if I write a letter that doesn't meet your form, me as an alderman, I'm subjecting myself to a $500 fine.
Correct. That doesn't mean that you can't work on things through the legislative process if you disagree with the recommendation of SLDC. That's allowing SLDC to take the initial step and streamline that process.
And they're an independent body, and they can make whatever determination they want. But I'm looking at future aldermen. They're independent elected officials. They're not beholden to SLDC, nor is SLDC beholden to them. But you're basically limiting their ability to advocate for or against something beyond the words in your form letter here. And I don't think that's appropriate to be limiting it and then subjecting elected officials to criminal conduct for advocating a position. I just think that's absurd. And so I'm not going to support that in any way. And if that doesn't come out of here, I understand your other conflict of interest stuff, and I'm fine with that, but trying to limit what I can say in a letter, any alderman can say in a letter, I think is one, I think it's infringing on our independence as elected officials and our rights to free speech. And then the fact that you're going to, impart criminal culpability on doing so is just well beyond what we should be doing as legislators. I have nothing further. Actually, that's not true. Chairman, I guess my other question would be, I had noticed SLDC hasn't signed up. No one from the SLDC staff, I don't believe, has signed up to speak on this. I'd be curious what their position is on this piece of legislation, considering it has broad impacts on their workload and how they operate.
I believe we have Casey Milberg from the mayor's office, who last night told me that she was going to make sure that representatives from SLDC were going to be present today, or at least made available if there were questions from the committee.
Well, then my question to members of the SLDC staff would be, what's your position on this proposed committee substitutes? I mean, is this workable in your minds, and are you in support of this legislation?
So I see Casey is signed in. Casey Milberg is the new staff member in the mayor's office working on policy. Casey, I see that you're signed into the meeting. Are you here, present?
Yes, I'm here. My apologies. I had some issues getting this unmuted. Yes, for the record, my name is Casey Milberg. I'm the new policy director in the mayor's office. It was my understanding that SLDC was supposed to have some staff on this call this morning. I'm currently reaching out to them to see if there's a way that we can get them in, or if there's something preventing that. So
Director Richardson is trying to be added as a panelist. He's signed in, but not as a panelist, similar to my situation earlier.
Madam Chair, could we see Casey's face, please?
Can you see me now?
Madam Clerk, are you adding
Madam
Director?
Chair is muted.
I'm trying to keep myself under control today, so I'm staying muted. I wanted to say, Tracy, if you can help Indoor SLTV, please get CEO Richardson on.
I just sent him a link.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I have no problem if we want to move on, to questions from somebody else while we wait for Director Richardson or somebody from SLDC. I have nothing further. I'd just like to hear what their thoughts are on this, and then maybe have some questions for them.
Well, Alderman Kotar, that is a very significant question that you have asked. I am also receiving some serious concerns from other members of the committee. So we might as well handle this now before we move on.
Understood.
All right, thank you very much.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I have a family appointment that I have to take care of and leave at 10:30. Do you need me for a quorum after 10:30?
I don't believe so, sir.
Okay, then, so I will be leaving at 10:30 because I have an appointment.
I understand. Thank you for that notice.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, how are we coming?
He is not signed in. Let me try calling him. Oh, let's see. Ah, there he is. Okay.
All right, thank you. President Richardson?
Yes, I'm present. Sorry, I was trying to get over to become a panelist. It was a little bit.
We've had all kinds of problems this morning, so we understand. There's been a question posed. I would like to let Alderman Coder pose this concern that he has. And we believe that it's important to hear your position, all right?
Yes, for sure.
Alderman Kodar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Director Richardson, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know you just joined us and missed some of the earlier discussion in Alderman Cohn's presentation of this committee substitute on Board Bill 64, which would have wide-ranging implications for your office. So I guess my first question is, have you had a chance to digest the committee substitute to Board Bill 64?
Yeah, so I received the committee substitute last night. I was working with Casey Milberg, who I think is also on the call, and my counsel to review it. We have provided some edits to the board bill that have been incorporated. And I think in addition to that, the only outstanding item that I would like to have clarified is the development proposal report. Alderman Cohn, I think that's something that you all wanted and required from SLDC to provide. And so having some alignment with our new process and policy that was approved by our LCRA board earlier this week, and then also was presented last week at the HUD's committee around the new scorecard, the new process, how we will have neighborhood engagement for projects over $10 million, which I think is very much in alignment with everything that's outlined within the board bill. However, just formalizing what's required in that development report would be extremely helpful for us. And then also as it relates to partnering with the Board of Aldermen, ensuring that they are engaged in the process. However, ensuring that SLDC has the ability to perform their analysis in a way that's not contingent on any political narrative or platform, but being very consistent and precise, and providing some reliability to the development community as well as to the public on how we are scoring projects and then presenting that proposal to the Board of Aldermen to go then to the legislative process of passing an ordinance. And then once that ordinance is passed, LCRA then has the ability to negotiate up to the ceiling that has been approved by the Board of Aldermen, and then we finalize a redevelopment agreement. I do also want to note that everything that's within these redevelopment agreements must be complied with, from the WMBE certification to other provisions that's outlined within the agreement prior to SLDC or our staff sending any letters to the assessor's office or any other taxing jurisdictions to ensure that they don't approve any abatement until all of those obligations are met within the agreement. So this is a very consistent process. It has requirements and stipulations already in place to ensure that everything within the redevelopment agreements and then our process is complied with prior to any abatement being awarded. And we've seen projects that have, even through the ordinance that's been passed by the Board of Aldermen and entered into redevelopment agreements. And if the developer doesn't comply, we have had instances in which we do not approve that abatement because they had not met all of their requirements. So we do have those things already in place. Any further questions?
I want to go to Alderman Kotar, and then I want to go back to Alderman Cohen. Go right ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So, Director, thank you for that thorough explanation. Just to distill that down, it sounds like maybe there's, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are there still maybe some issues that need to be worked through on what exactly is in this development proposal that you and your staff are going to be responsible for drafting and preparing as an additional amendment to the board bill, and also some concerns about, I guess, SLDC's independent analysis and making sure that is still free of political influence?
Yeah, that's correct. So we basically would like to see the new process and policy that was presented last week really codified in this legislation. Again, I think a lot of the information that's already outlined within the developer proposal report within this legislation is acceptable. It's just ensuring that there's harmony between what LCRA and our other development boards pass and that it's included within this legislation. So we have some alignment moving forward. So I don't have any other really objections, but really just ensuring that there's alignment because we want to have a full partnership and cooperation with the Board of Aldermen here at SLDC and our respective development boards.
Great. Thank you. I have nothing further right now, Madam Chair. I appreciate you joining us, Director.
All right, thank you. Alderman Cohen, I know there's been a lot going on in the last couple of weeks, and everybody is, working very, very hard to get so many things in place at once. But one of the things that we all do know is that there's been a lot of work put into the development process, and what has been presented to us in the last few weeks really kind of outlines exactly what I think your intent is in some of the language in the bill. And as chair, I would like to ask you if it is possible for you to take some additional time and work with those proponents, most especially SLDC, so that those criterias can be included in here, because I think that helps the bill a lot. Especially if that is the processes that they are using, which have been put in place in order to have remedy to some of the questions and concerns we've had about past practices. So give me your thought on that, Alderman Cohen.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. What I would like to see happen is the adoption of the committee substitute and then go through the amendments, just so that people know where the board bill currently stands, so that we're not kind of like talking about things that might have been iterations like 2, 3, 4 conversations ago. So I would prefer if we're able to at least adopt the committee substitute and committee and then go through the amendments that I referenced earlier. And then we're all kind of working from the same page with respect to the board bill. I don't, to your point, I'm happy to take additional time to work with, stakeholders and get further alignment, but I think it's easier to align on something that is not in various stages of the process. So if we're able to adopt the committee substitute, talk through the amendments and take votes on them as necessary. And then we can hold it in committee, and I'll work with you on scheduling a future hearing date for passage or possible other amendments that need to be added to it.
So you know how I work. I don't particularly like to put information to the public that is likely going to be changed in some form or fashion. I would prefer that we just hold this, complete the work that needs to be completed, clean up the amendments, put the additional process and procedure into the bill so that we have total clarity and we can get back. We have time. So let's hold the bill, and the two, especially with the assistance and guidance of SLDC, because a lot of us have seen all of that. It is so specific, and that is what you want in this bill. Plus, it doesn't make sense to talk about something that's going to be changed. I wouldn't want to do that to the public.
I'm not sure I'm following, Madam Chair, because SLDC just said that they are not in opposition to the bill.
That's not what he said. He said that there are a lot of things that he would like to see here in it. And also, he says that he has some things that were passed that have not been put in here yet.
There's amendments, though, that's what I'm trying to say, is that I would like to adopt the committee substitute and address some of the amendments that address his concerns that we've spent the last week or so working with SLDC and their council on drafting these amendments and getting their feedback, concerns, and trying to work with them on that. So there's roughly 10 amendments.
I'm not going to go back and forth. He said that he worked with people as last night. And he
Great.
still has,
I
he still
was
has
on the
things
phone
to-
until 11 o'clock last night
Yeah.
talking about this board bill. So
and you all
And-
still have some things to do.
there's 10 amendments that are a result of the conversations with the city councilor's office, with the legal counsel over at SLDC, the president's office, and others that are before us this morning that address those concerns.
Okay. Can we table this bill and we'll come back to it next week? Okay,
Madam Chair, may I speak?
go right ahead, Madam President.
Thank you. I want to be clear that all of the work that you are stating needs to be done has already been done, in fact. And if we can adopt the committee substitute and the amendments, then all of President Richardson's concerns will be addressed through those amendments, and we will have a bill in final form. I think it would be beneficial for this committee to see those amendments and see that bill in that final form. And there is also a red line version of that bill that is available once all of those amendments are adopted. I assure you that my office, Alderman Cohn, the mayor's office, have worked diligently with SLDC over many months at this point in time to get this bill to a place where we've really just been going back with parsing some few words, and I think have it to a place where it is ready to be, it is just about in its final form. So if we could please take those, please adopt the committee substitute and adopt those amendments, then we will all be working with the final form of the bill.
Okay, Madam President, I couldn't even digest all of this morning before the meeting started. And I'm still sitting here trying to read through things. And taking 2 or 3 hours right now to go through all of that is not where I'm at on my committee today. I have other bills here that I want to go ahead and hear, and I'd like to move forward. We will come back and dedicate all of the meeting next week to this one bill because it's critical. And I think all the members on the committee need to have an opportunity to first of all, read all of this. And then secondly, have the ability to take all the time that we need in order to get this done because it's a critical bill. So we will be hearing this next week. Thank you.
It is a critical bill, and we are running up against a clock at this point in time to get it done before the end of session.
And we will get it done. We will definitely get it done.
Madam
We'll hear the
Chair,
bill next week.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
can I make a recommendation that we also just go through the committee to ask other members of the committee if they have any questions regarding the committee substitute, since it's still before us? And that way, if there are any other concerns on the part of members of the committee, that I can try and address those,
I've
over
made
the course of the next week.
I've made my decision and I've voiced it. And so we'll be moving on. Thank you. Can I get, let's see. The next board bill is Board Bill 120. Madam Clerk, please indicate that this board bill will be on our agenda for next week. I'm asking that any committee members, if you have any additional things that you want to clarify, you need to get your questions prepared because I know you're in the same position I'm in. You know, you can't get something minutes before a meeting this complicated and try to digest it and move it. It's first of all, it's rude. That's the first thing. And then secondly, this is just too important. It's much too important to handle it this way. And I heard a different conversation from the president of SLDC than what is indicated to me by others. So I'm done with that. I need to move on to Board Bill number 120. I believe that's next.
Madam Chair, may I just clarify one thing? And that is that pursuant to the rules were followed and the committee substitute was given to this committee 48 hours in advance. And so this committee has had 2 days to be able to read over this bill. It was not given at the last minute.
So that even gives me further reason that we need to go to hold the bill, because last night there were concerns and people were working on it and things need to be added and or clarified. That was just stated by the sponsor of the bill as well as the CEO of SLDC. So we still need to get those things cleaned up and have it ready for next week. Thank you. Can we, Madam Clerk, Board Bill 120, could you please read the preamble?
Board Bill number 120, introduced by Alderman Brandon Bosley. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment appropriating a portion of funds received under the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, Public License number 117-2, March 11, 2021, ARPA, authorizing certain expenditures of such funds to the extent received, authorizing contracts and other documents to expend the funds to the extent received, containing a severability clause and containing an emergency clause.
Thank you very much. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Bosley?
You're muted.
I'm here.
All right. Alderman Bosley, Alderman Bosley, what I'd like to do is to have you give a short opening on your board bill. We want to respect all the people who have signed up to speak so that we can get to them and get to the committee people as well. So, sir, move forward in opening your board bill 120.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. This is a board bill. Of course, you all know that it's supposed to be for infrastructure. There are a lot of things going on within our city right now that deserves funding for infrastructure, and multiple things that we all will see as being a part of the infrastructure of the city. Infrastructure is foundation. To be short, that is what we all stand on. And as we try to build the city up, having a shaky foundation and things that we know to be things that would change the trajectory of where our city is going and the people that live in our city are important when we talk about infrastructure. So, with those things being said, if you read and if you have had the chance to really take a look at the bill, there are some things there that I'm looking at, we're not looking at taking out. There are some great things there that are in the bill right now as far as a PSAP center. We got a answering center right now that could possibly create the synergies that's needed for all of our individual EMS workers or emergency workers, for them to be able to go and communicate with each other in one particular building when we are having particular issues and problems that needs immediate responses to. There are multiple things in this bill that actually helps the infrastructure of the city. And, with that, there are also entities and organizations that I'd like to bring forth and have some conversation with. But also, I believe that are part of the infrastructure of the city. We ourselves sometimes focus so much on buildings that we don't put the time into people. And that's not, a jab at, any one person or individuals that are here within the city of St. Louis. But we have to make sure that as we put money into traffic control, which is what one of the things this bill tries to do, we have to put education behind responsible drivers. And that comes down to having individuals who feel like they have a responsibility to the city of St. Louis, because we also have done what we needed to do to make sure that we're responsible and ensuring that they feel that we have given what we can give to them as far as responsible leaders and responsible folks who are working to try to bring the city to a better place. There is no one-stop shop. I want everybody to know there's no one way that we can improve everything within the city. If we paved every street right now, you have a whole bunch of our youngins right now utilizing those streets as a thoroughfare to get from one place to another, knowing that there are no bumps or humps in the street. So the city needs help. And we all know, there are different things that we have not tried before. We should be trying. This is a time where we will never get back. We have funds that we've never had before, and I think it's important for us to try some things that we haven't tried or have.
He's frozen.
Am I the only one that he's frozen? Okay.
Nope, he's frozen.
Nope, I just stopped. Am I still frozen? Nope. Yes.
We can hear you
You're
all.
good.
We can't
You're
see
good.
you.
Okay, sorry about that. This is the time, realistically, like where every single member of the board right now, right? We just saw over the last weekend thousands of not thousands, but thousands of people talked about the car break-ins at the Foundry. We put millions of dollars into the Foundry, right? And we had an actual shootout with our teenagers there. So when we go out here and we spending all these millions of dollars and we look at what we've done for the actual youngins who we're trying to keep not only out of jail, but potentially grown to become members of the society that we're trying to create, they're telling us flat out, right out their mouths, that there's nothing for them to do. They're saying right out, I'm gonna go steal a car. Like that's not something that you have to go out and research. It's on the news every single day. We don't have to worry, or not worry. We don't have to really, I want to say, go far to find out what these youth are doing with their time that's idle. And our city, out of the $500 million that we got, and you all can research this, we put $2 million in the recreational centers, another $10 million into violence prevention. Every single child ain't violent. All of our kids ain't out here being violent individuals. So we creating havens for violent people. But what happens with violent people getting violent? Well, not violent, but get in areas where violence, because they are violent people, exist. We have to start creating a scenario where we actually care about the youth. And I'm not saying anybody in this committee has not. I think everybody has done the best that they can with the knowledge that they have to create the best type of neighborhood living for the neighborhoods that they represent. But with that, I do have one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the entire United States. And I would just ask you all to just listen to some of these people who are coming forth, speaking about the things that they have done, the things that they can do for the city of St. Louis, and things that we should potentially be interested in as lawmakers, and people who do have just a small amount of control. We don't have all the control. We right now, with these little funds that we do have, we have a little bit. And generally, when folks are coming to us asking for things, we're saying, no, we can't do this and we can't do that. We actually have the opportunity to do some things and say yes to some stuff. We shouldn't just leave it up to, we shouldn't just leave it up to the idea that things will work themselves out and things will work itself out. So with that, I'm just asking for you all here that are on this committee today, please just listen to these folks that are out here in the community. Listen to these folks that are out here trying to do things and have been trying to do things for, a very long time. We do have the ability to help. I'm just asking that you listen to these folks that are asking for it. And with that, I will give the chairwoman, well, not give, but I'd ask the chairwoman to ask if there is a list of speakers who have signed up. If there's not a list of speakers, I kind of got an idea of how I want to go down the line, but I'm definitely taking direction from the chairwoman and how it is she wants to run her meeting.
Thank you very much, Alderman Bosley. Madam Clerk, we do have a list of speakers for Board Bill 120.
Yes, ma'am. I have staff from the mayor's office. Jared Boyd, Casey Milberg, Sarah Baker, Grace Young, Kevin Bailey.
So what I'd like to do first is ask our Chief of Staff, Jared Boyd, to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you to members of the committee and members of the public that have decided to participate in today's committee hearing. My name is Jared Boyd. I have the honor of serving as Chief of Staff in the Mayor's Office, and I come here in support of Board Bill 120 in its current form as presented to the committee. As many of you have been with us, we have engaged in a very long process to solicit community feedback on priorities for ARPA spending. And as a result of that, we have made historic investments in our economic justice package, in our working families package, and now we have before you an infrastructure package that is the result of thousands of surveys, town halls, and other engagement with many stakeholders. So I do want to emphasize that this bill is, as presented, something that our office supports, and that infrastructure in neighborhood transformation were amongst the top responses that people wanted to see investments in, particularly making our streets safer and making this a safe place for folks, whether they're walking, riding a bicycle, or driving. I'm going to serve as somewhat of an MC in talking with or working with our department heads to kind of walk through some of these investments. I would say that Alderman Bosley and I have had conversations about some of the investments that he would like to see as a part of this. I have not seen any language around those investments or some of those investments, and I don't know what investments he would like to see that would be changed as a result of this bill. I think there are some of those ideas may have merit, but we are of the position in this office that we would like to see this remain an infrastructure bill. And I've offered to him that I think there are other sources of funding for things that are not traditional infrastructure allocations. And there are things dealing with juveniles, and you all have generously appropriated funds to the tune of $10 million for juveniles, including $4 million for youth jobs and $6 million to deal with a whole spectrum of juvenile issues. We know we work at the speed of government, but our Office of Violence Prevention just started a few months ago, opened an office at Sumner, and has already hired several people and will soon have the ability to implement and put out RFPs for the $6 million that you so generously appropriated. So while we all are in agreement that juvenile issues are a pressing concern, you all have given us the tool to deal with that, and we just need to have the ability to stand up our Office of Violence Prevention and get some of that money on the street. So with that, like I said, want to emphasize that while we believe that this should remain an infrastructure bill, and there's so many outstanding needs with respect to infrastructure, some of the investments that Alderman Bosley may like to make, I think there are other sources for those type of investments. So I'm able to just kind of talk broadly about the bill. This bill is in large part about traffic safety. There's more than $40 million in this bill that builds on Board Bill 184 for traffic safety and paving to help implement, so on a short-term basis, implement a lot of our traffic studies that have already been completed, improve or make immediate improvements to high crash areas, and invest in traffic calming in places that we've already appropriated money for paving. But this bill also will provide us with the ability to leverage these investments and seek additional federal funds through a master plan that will hopefully lead to additional federal funding for traffic safety and physical improvements. This bill also makes a significant investment in sidewalks, which are critical for folks of all abilities and walks of life across the city. From a public safety standpoint, we all know that 911 is an issue that's at the top of a lot of our minds, and this bill provides funding for a PSAP center where all our operators can work together. And there are other aspects about this bill: workplace modernization, helping to address the digital divide, which 29% of our citizens do not have access to high-speed internet. So this bill, like I said, is a infrastructure bill with a heavy emphasis on traffic safety and making sure that we're giving our citizens and visitors a city that is physically safe for those who walk, ride bicycles, or ride in cars. So with that, I'm happy to, being respectful of the committee's time. Like I said, I have department heads with us. We have Rich Bradley, Board of Public Safety, Scott Ogilvie with Planning, and other department heads that can answer specific questions or walk through, if necessary, the appropriations as currently stated in the board bill. Or like I said, answer implementation questions or how we came about the specific appropriation. So, Madam Chair and members of the committee, I defer to you on how you would like to proceed with your time, and given the fact that we have several speakers.
We do have several speakers. We've lost a couple already. One of the things that I wanted to do is, I know that you all have emailed us this information already, and you also made a couple of public presentations on it out to the general public. But some of our committee members may not have had the opportunity, to pick that up. So what I want you to do is to please ask your staff to give me the quick version of each one of those components. Thank you. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I will go line by line with respect to the appropriation, if that is helpful.
Thank you.
So the first line item is $12 million to design and implement traffic calming and roadway improvements based on traffic studies. And then there's a second appropriation for ADA and traffic calming improvements for the 5 corridors that were identified in Board Bill 184. And I think Rich Bradley may be someone who can kind of speak to those 2 investments and how they work hand in hand. So Rich.
Yep. Thank you, Jared. Good morning, everyone. Very briefly, as requested, what these 2 particular items do is they provide funding to BPS for design and implementation of traffic calming and roadway improvements. So on the first item, very briefly, we will look at the completed traffic studies. There was a map that had been provided. There are a number of those in place. We will look at that and we will prioritize out of those $12 million worth of those in order to do some amount of traffic calming in those corridors. The second item, Board Bill 184, was to pave these particular corridors. And so when we got into the discussions on them, there were additional items that were needed, such as ADA accessible ramps and sidewalks. And then we said, well, while we're doing that, what we ought to also do is some modest traffic calming as well. So that would be a portion of that. And as far as those are concerned, we have currently engaged consultants and we have them ready to go so that if we are allowed to do this and this bill passes, we could get into those relatively quickly and begin that work.
Okay. Jared, go right ahead.
All right, the next appropriation is for Greenway and the North Grand Corridor Improvement Area. So the Brookline Greenway is a project many of you are familiar with that is going to draw on both philanthropic sources, state, local, and federal sources to help provide a greenway that includes the North Grand, Cass, and Spring area. Just as we have done in other places, this $2 million of funding will help us in a local match for federal grants for this project. So much like you all did with the FQHC match, this investment will provide additional investment. So we ask for consideration there. The next investment that is in that kind of mention is the Public Safety Answering Point project, which is a very important project in terms of 911 and our readiness for public safety. And this $15 million appropriation, we are hoping to leverage to get more state funding for this project, which will cost over $40 million to build. I talked earlier about safety improvements for top 10 crash locations. There are things that, like I said, from a traffic safety standpoint, can be done immediately, can be done in the medium term, and things that have to be done in the long term. And this is one of those things that can help in the short term. Another line item is street paving for additional arterial streets. While we appropriated money in 184 for paving for arterial streets, we still are at a backlog on street paving for the city. In terms of long-term planning, wanting to develop a mobility and transportation master plan so that we can use that to get additional funding that's available in the federal infrastructure bill. The Board of Aldermen has also passed resolutions in 2020 and 2021 calling on the city to invest in a master plan. So those are additional improvements that Rich may want to add commentary or additional context for as well.
All right, sir. Go right ahead, Mr. Bradley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jared, you did an outstanding job with that. Just want to highlight a couple things real briefly. So the PSAP facility, as was mentioned, is a critical needed facility. The total estimated cost is about $42 million. Currently, we have about $5.75 million. We have began the process back in 2019. The current status is the feasibility study is 75% complete. And so we would move into final design sometime late spring, early summer, assuming that the funding was in place. In a perfect world, if all the funding comes together, as Jared mentioned, we would finish sometime in this third to fourth quarter of 26. That could possibly be expedited depending on the funding available, but that is a very critical facility for our police, fire, EMS, SEMA, Citizen Service Bureau to respond to our citizens for 911 as well as general everyday other items. So that was the one I wanted to highlight there. Thank you.
All right, sir.
All right, moving forward, the next line item is for plowing residential streets. The equipment, the plowing equipment that we have in the streets department only allows us to navigate arterials and other larger streets. We have difficulty getting our vehicles on more narrow streets. So looking to make investments so that people are not as impacted on those narrow streets when we do have snow or ice or other dangerous precipitation. $1 million for refuse pilot project. Refuse and trash has certainly been an issue that we are working diligently to address, and having the ability to pilot roller carts on specific trash routes, and looking at making other improvements, given the fact that we do have a current worker shortage. In addition to trying to address that shortage, we think are critical to continuing to provide the municipal services that people pay for and deserve. And then last on this portion of the list, sidewalk improvements, $6 million to help address the backlog of sidewalk improvements that are in our system. We know that there is some money for sidewalk improvements in STL Works, but there still we still need additional resources to deal with our backlog of sidewalks. And then last but not least, $5 million for digital equity fund, and happy to provide additional context from Simon Wong, our Chief Technology Officer, on that particular line item.
Okay, sir, go right ahead.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, was that your invitation for me to speak?
Yes, sir, go right ahead.
Good morning, everybody, members of the board and the public. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this request. The Digital Equity Fund is some monies to be set aside to address the digital divide in the city of St. Louis. If people remember, last year in 22, Ernst & Young, along with the Community Foundation and the Regional Business Council, released a report on the state of the digital divide in St. Louis. And we also know during the COVID pandemic, what a detrimental and drastic impact lack of internet access and lack of devices to actually connect to the internet, or the training to use those devices, how that holds people back. And so this is both a cause and effect of poverty, and these monies are to be used in order to provide matching funds when we go apply for federal and state grants for projects to remediate this device. This issue. And they could be used for, the projects could span implementing fiber, providing subsidies to households to connect, providing devices to those who can't afford it, or even providing education to seniors and other people who require instruction and support to be able to leverage internet technologies that most of us take for granted.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And then the last three line items for Board Bill 120 include CAD software for 911, 1.6 million funding to streamline technology, the technology system to be more efficient and responsive. As many of you know, our 911 systems were not really on the same system, or having kind of not competing systems, but not integrated systems. So helping to invest in CAD software that will allow all of our 911 operators to kind of work together. 2.45 million for workplace modernization, making it less stressful for our citizens, small business owners, and city employees to work and do business with the city. And then last but not least, $400,000 for improvements to Hyde Park, and Alderman Bosley is probably better suited to speak to that particular appropriation. But with that being said, those are all the line items in Board Bill 120. It's currently presented.
Thank you very much. Alderman Bosley, I want to go back to you for clarity on Hyde Park.
Yes, ma'am. Is that a little bit better? Sorry about that.
That's better.
I have like 3 cameras going on at one time. My apologies. So Hyde Park in general, when we spoke about that, we spoke about having some sort of a water garden, the same thing that we have downtown, splash garden, and trying to figure out some sort of upgrades, particularly that the community kind of right around where folks will be coming from the NGA, then eventually impacted by the soccer stadium. You know, we only have 2 exits. That Salisbury is definitely one of them.
Okay, you're freezing
Come
up.
down
We
the
can't-
street and within a few minutes, it's someplace where people want to take the children and
Madam Chair, is it just me or is the
you hear me
alderman
now?
frozen?
He's having technical difficulties. Yes.
Man, this sucks. Can y'all hear me now?
Now we
Yes.
can.
Loud and
Crazy.
clear.
So this
Loud
is the
and
reason why
clear.
our chief of staff was talking about the digital equity fund. Listen, in my area, we don't have real good Wi-Fi. We don't have towers over here. For years, we've been neglected. So unfortunately, when I do have meetings, this is, you know, you're seeing my reality. And not only is it my reality, it's the reality of my seniors here. It's the reality of individuals who would actually have access to the grant programs and all those amazing things that we have and that we're offering. But, you know, you see what's going on with me. I'm an alderman, and my, you know, it's not, I'm literally using my cell phone here, which is not connected to Wi-Fi or anything else. But it shows you that there are no towers around here realistically that we can rely on that can get us a good service. This is difficult within our areas for folks to be able to bridge that gap when we are really, you know, realistically talking about technology and the problems that exist within our communities and being able to spread our messages and receive messages at the same time. That's why the digital equity fund is extremely important. And other things that are, you know, in this proposal are important because we are without and have been without for so long that you can see right now, even with the actual government that are out here trying to propose things that changes where it is that we are and gives us, you know, a better projection in the future of what we could be. We're still having challenges in 2013. So, you know, my apologies for my lackluster internet service and my inability to have access to I would say hard wires. You know, it is what it is. So, you know, with that being said, please excuse me.
All right, so you do have some other speakers on this board bill. So what I'd like to do is to go to your speakers, please.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Madam Clerk.
Yes, ma'am. We do have members of the public. Dr. Paulette Sankofa, Jean DeRose, Lois Conley, Brian Kruger, Kayla Vaughn, Jamila Rogers, Evie Hemphill, Virginia Drew, Patrick Vandertune, Eric Ellingson, Richard Gaines, Edna Hank Pipes, Malik Gay, Liz Kramer, Charles Bryson.
Okay, so Vice Chair Kotar.
I'm here, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I would like for you to take over the meeting for me, please. Can you continue? And one of the things that I needed to make a statement on before I leave is for our next agenda, excuse me, if necessary, we will have 2 meetings next week, but we will determine that based on when the additional work has been completed on Board Bill 64. So I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that. And also, The TIE plan will be added for discussion on the next agenda. The department heads have his last iteration of the TIE plan, but they needed some time to pull the information together in order to present and support the conversation. For me, that's it, but I'm going to have to leave, and I needed you to take over, sir, and I thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, I know we just referenced a number of public speakers, but I think before we get to them, I'd like to give members of the committee an opportunity to weigh in and ask questions of administration staff related to Board Bill 120. So I'm going to go down the list here. Alderman Cone.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, I have quite a few questions actually regarding Board Bill 120. So just going through the exhibit of programs that are being funded, the first allocation here is for $12 million for design, implementing traffic calming roadway improvements based on completed traffic studies. What are the completed traffic studies? What corridors are they? What stretches are they for? Where is the $12 million being spent?
All right. I can take that question if you like.
Please.
Thank you. So there are a number of corridors that have been completed. I can walk through those with you. There's
Please.
also an exhibit that was provided. So first of all, we have Hampton from Gravois to Chippewa. That was completed in 2019. South Kings Highway, Gravois to Nottingham, completed in 19. South Grand, Utah to Chippewa, completed in 21. North Kings Highway, Lindell to Dr. Martin Luther King, completed in 21. Lindell Skinker to Kings Highway, completed in 21. Center Cross, Arsenal to Magnolia, completed in 21. Goodfellow, Lillian to Halls Ferry Circle, completed in 22. And the downtown improvements on 4th and Broadway, Shoto to Cole, and Washington, 14th to 4th, completed in 22. So those are the 8 studies that have been completed. We have not at this time determined out of those which ones would be funded out of the $12 million. But I would say that we will walk through those and we would probably be able to fund the majority of them, somewhere on the order of probably six out of the 8 of them. We just need to go through them. And we looked at the funding. We know there's not enough funding to do all of them, or there possibly could be enough funding. We don't think so. And we would work through those issues to, put together an equitable program for working this project out within those completed studies.
Okay, and that might actually segue into my next question, which is the 5 corridors in Board Bill 184. I read that several weeks ago. I vaguely recall that it's like Jefferson, Grand, maybe Kings Highway. Can you, for the purposes of the public hearing here, just share what those 5 corridors are?
Yes, sir. So those 5 corridors are Goodfellow, Delmar to Lillian, Grand, Holly Hills to Hall Street, Jefferson, Chippewa to Shoto, Kings Highway, Gravois to West Florissant, and Union and Wright to Florissant.
So Goodfellow, Grand, Kings Highway, Jefferson, and what was the 5th one?
Union.
Union. Thank
and Wright
you.
to Florissant.
I've been talking about Union. So obviously some of those 5 overlap with the 8. Does that mean that they're going to not receive funding from either one of these pools, or does that mean that they'll be eliminated from the pool of 12 million?
So I think what we will do is I will tell you what we will do is the consultants that I referred to that we hired, we will parse out the corridors to them, and we are working on that now, as a matter of fact. And assuming the funding is approved, we will maximize the funding to try to get all the corridors done that I mentioned, the 8 corridors, in the first item. But yes, we will work them together, if you will, and utilize the funding from both of these items as well as the funding from Board Bill 184 to these obviously in 184 have a paving component to them, but we would work the traffic calming and ADA components together with that from 184 as well as these two items and maximize to get as many of those corridors done as we can.
So, but am I reading this first line correctly where it says design and implement traffic calming and roadway improvements based off of completed studies? So do the studies not include design?
A study does not include design. A study is a planning tool to get us to a design. Then you need to hire a consultant to do an engineering design with all the details, and then you have a contractor build it.
Okay. So we already have studied those 8 sections that you listed earlier. They already have studies completed for them. It would just be moving them into the design and that implementation of traffic calming. So does the implementation include ADA paving and all of that, or is what's involved in the implementation?
So the implementation is the design work. It is the bidding of it. It is handicap ramps, ADA accessible ramps. It is sidewalk replacements. The traffic calming itself could be modest traffic calming, anything from striping to pinned on bump outs to things that could actually be placed on existing pavement. It doesn't always include the pavement. Of course, if there's an opportunity to do the pavement, we would like to do the pavement if there's sufficient funding.
Okay, so it just sounds as though we might be double dipping a little bit here between the 12 million and the 14.5 million. And then, line item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is street paving for arterials. So which arterials are those?
So on the capital committee, as you're aware, you are a capital committee member. There was originally this year provided to us from the street department, $14 million in street paving. And the capital committee itself has attempted to allocate the other $6 million through an ancillary board bill. So that 14 million, that's 6 million from the capital committee, plus this 8 million, the proposed streets would be as follows. And when I say the scope of work would be as follows, milling and paving, ADA upgrades to current standards along the path, and any modest street calming measures along that corridor. So the ones they listed were North Broadway, and so that was Cole to the city limits north. They listed South Broadway, which was South Broadway from the city limits south to Shoto. The street department listed Florissant, and that would be Florissant and 13th from Tucker to the city limits. So those were the 3 major arterials that were included in that 14 million. So this is a portion of that 14 million.
And this is just paving. It's not restriping, reconfiguration of lanes, lane diets, nothing. It's just straight paving.
So as I mentioned, it would include milling and paving, ADA upgrades to current standards, which means if there's ADA ramps that need to be replaced, those will be handled. And then modest street calming along the entire corridor. And again, that could simply be striping.
But striping as is, not necessarily doing a lane diet.
That's true. It could be striping as it is, and I would assume the striping that would be included in the traffic calming would probably be a bump out type of item with delineators or something modest along those lines. I wouldn't foresee that it would turn all those into a lane diet configuration.
So it's basically just paving streets and putting in ADA ramps where feasible.
Yes.
Okay. It doesn't exactly change the paradigm there from a safety perspective. The PSAP, I totally get. I guess my question though, and I'm not sure if this is for you, Rich, or if it's for Jared, but do we know, will the PSAP and its systems, processes, tools, will that interact with the county system or have the capability of interacting with the county system? I'm just curious if we're trying to kind of work with our partners out in the county on this as well.
So I will tell you what I know about that, and the answer is yes. All the equipment that will be in here, just like the systems that we always replace with fire and police and EMS, because of mutual aid agreements that they have to communicate with them. And we have talked to, in doing our programming of this project, talked to St. Louis County, Jefferson County, Franklin County, St. Charles County, and even Metro East to make sure that what we're doing here is able to not only communicate with them, but be, one with them, if you will, for emergency response.
And if I
Okay.
could just add a little bit to Rich, add a little color to Rich's discussion on traffic calming, in the sense that, highlighting the fact that we are doing a master plan that we're trying to leverage for additional federal resources for street calming, and also working towards establishing a Vision Zero policy as well. So just to add a little bit of or texture to kind of Rich's earlier comments.
Okay, thank you. And Rich, you brought up the Metro East, which I'm glad you did, because I know I'm probably not the only one who's been, driving along Interstate 55 and have witnessed an accident or, some sort of situation, and I've called 911 and been transferred to 911 in the Metro East over in Illinois. Or I shouldn't say transferred, picked up. The line was answered by a 911 operator in the Metro East. So I'm glad that those conversations are taking place. That's a really awkward thing to have happen for someone who lives in the city, is present in the city when they're calling 911 from their cell phone and it's answered by someone in the Metro East, which is, it doesn't compute for a lot of people. Will this address that type of situation with cell phone towers and how they connect to PSAP, or will that still be an issue that persists?
So I really can't address that, but I would have to believe, yes, it would, because we would have state-of-the-art equipment. And obviously part of what we're doing there is working with those providers to make sure that everything works properly. So I would believe, yes, it would correct that.
Okay. Have you had that situation happen to you? I mean, I know you take 55 probably as much as I do, so.
I am not. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, it does happen. And I mean, it's happened to me personally. I know it's happened to constituents. So, just to put that on your radar, it is a very awkward situation that happens for city residents on occasion, especially those that are along the riverfront. So the Digital Equity Fund is kind of the next one on the list here. I appreciate the sentiment behind it, fully support wanting to address the digital divide in St. Louis. But aside from talking about the issue, no one really addressed how this money is going to be spent. So can someone share with me specifics with respect to how the money will be spent? Basically, what was shared is that it'll be used for matches, but matches for what? Or, I mean, are we talking about, upgrades? I'm not even going to throw things out into the world. Can, someone share with me a little bit more specifics as to where that $5 million will be spent?
Sure. So I can take that, Jared, if that's okay. No, good question. So how it's actually going to be expended is undetermined at this point. Late last year, we awarded a contract to a national broadband consultant to help come in and evaluate the infrastructure assets that we have, and also do some community engagement and use their expertise in understanding market structure and telecom policy and all of those types of things, and take the results of that other study that I mentioned that was done by Ernst & Young last year, and then give us a way forward. So what the Ernst & Young study did was they gave a general assessment for both the city and the county of an overall aggregate estimate of what it would take to solve the digital divide for the region. Right. So after subsequent conversations with them and having them separate out the city data, we've come up with estimates. If we just did a 20% match in order to remediate the digital divide for every resident in St. Louis City, approximately between 20 and $28 million to remediate it all. Right. So this includes not only building fiber, so it supports the high-speed internet, but also providing devices, providing subsidies, and providing training to people, and supporting anchor institutions like the library, maybe the public schools, any of those anchor institutions. So those are the plans. We don't know exactly, and that's what was missing in our first round, and that prevented us from applying. We didn't have the economic, the financial and the engineering data behind it to submit for grants for the ARPA funding, which actually closed late last year. There's a second round of about $42 billion that the federal government is giving to all the states. The way that's going to be spent is the state of Missouri has to come up with a digital equity plan for the state. And then we submit our grant applications to the state of Missouri, which is actually going to distribute whatever allocation the feds give the state of Missouri. So that is undetermined at this point, and the list of projects is also undetermined because the project has just kicked off last week. And it's based, the 5 million was based on what dent can we make based on very aggregate numbers from the Ernst & Young report of between 20 and 28 million if we had a 20 or 25% match. Does that clear up anything?
It does. I mean, I'm kind of walking away with that, with it's still undetermined. Yes. And you know, my understanding is that these are monies that need to be spent in the next 2.5 years, and it doesn't feel great allocating something to something that's not specific, that we don't know when it's going to be spent or how it's going to be spent. But I do appreciate the additional information. So the workplace modernization and enhancements at almost $2.5 million for that. Jared, can you walk through what those are exactly?
Actually, Simon has been working on this, so I will kick it to Simon.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so more than half of it is to do what we call business process improvement. There are two critical citizen-facing services that the city has. One is business licensing, and the other one is special events processing that requires a lot of coordination between multiple city departments. And it is also the cause of a lot of angst and dissatisfaction on the part of the people applying for these types of things in understanding how the process works, what departments they need to interact with, and where to start and where to go for information. So last year, we did a couple of days worth of business process improvement with Worldwide Technologies that have left us with how we might go about improving this process for the applicants. And it involves not only process changes, but software and implementation and possibly websites to help pass out the information, lead them through the process, and give them a much more streamlined and informed process about where the application is. So more than half of it goes to address those two business process improvements around licensing and special events processing. There's also a few allocations in there for a cybersecurity assessment from an outside firm to come do some penetration testing to gauge the level of effectiveness of our cybersecurity defenses, the city's cybersecurity defenses. And then there's a host of smaller allocations in there for upgrading the laptops in the mayor's office. I came in last year, and in the mayor's office, we have people using personal laptops. There's no technology budget set aside to upgrade not only the equipment, but also video conferencing equipment that a lot of city departments depend on. There's money in there to undertake a pilot project for digital signatures for the city, possibly do some contracts management exploration, and single sign-on, which kind of reduces the number of possible user IDs and passwords residents might need to interact with city departments and collapse them to a single portal. So I can provide a list in written form if that helps.
I would certainly appreciate that. There were a couple of things that you mentioned in there that are, of particular interest to me. The single sign-on issue is something that I've, discussed in the past, and also the electronic signatures would be interesting. I actually would like to have more of a conversation around that, because just from a permitting perspective, whether it's the streets department, the water division, parks department, et cetera, many of those departments are still using triplicate forms that people are needing to have in-person wet signatures in order to make arrangements for various activities and whatnot. So I am, very curious to learn more about that. But if you're able to provide the clerk of the board with the specific breakdown of those enhancements so that we can look through that and maybe discuss them a little bit further, that would be great. Appreciate that, Simon.
Can I make set an expectation? Those monies are just to have pilot projects and all of these things I talked about. I don't want people leaving with this is going to establish it across the city for all processes, right? So
I would imagine that's not enough money to do that, but thank you for the clarification. I do, well, while we're on that, Simon, so you said half the money is going to these like kind of business services, special events, and business licensing. So have you had conversations with the license collector's office with respect to IT infrastructure needs?
So I think there was a representative. I have not had conversations about what changes that might impact, although we are already in conversations with the license collector on another mainframe migration project. When Worldwide Technologies convened what they call the customer journey mapping sessions last year, we had representatives from multiple departments, including the BAC and health and special events, and I think collector of revenue was there, police. So it wasn't just a mayor's office surfacing these estimates and the scoping of this project. It was multiple departments working together over the course of 2 days to kind of reimagine what the process might be, and then getting some high-level estimates about what it might take to implement those.
Okay, I'll look forward to the breakdown there with a little bit more detail.
Sure.
Thank you. And I would like to see that before we entertain a motion to pass the board bill as well. The next item, I'm not sure who to direct this to, perhaps the sponsor of the board bill, but the $400,000 that's in there for Hyde Park seems like a rather random allocation for this board bill. Many of our parks require attention. I don't have Marquette Park in my ward, but it is ward adjacent, and many of my constituents use it. It's one of the few parks in the city that has a recreation center, a pool, a learning center, and we were able, through grants and whatnot, to be able to get the city's first foosball court in there. and we're actively trying to work with residents, the allies for Marquette Park, to do more improvements within that park and to help facilitate higher utilization rates. And we have, as many of my colleagues know, some of the highest concentrations of youth in the entire city that live immediately around the Marquette Park area. And so, I'm kind of struggling with spending $400,000 on a fountain in Hyde Park. Are we open to doing other allocations for other parks, Alderman?
Without
Or
a
the
doubt.
mayor's
So
office if the alderman from the 3rd isn't available?
No, I'm here without it. So
Okay.
there is not an allocation specifically to Hyde Park for just a fountain. That was not allocated for a fountain at all. So, I would say this, and it's not a shot at, yourself or anybody else within the city. We all do the best that we can to represent the individuals who are in our areas. I have one of the most, if not the most dangerous ward in the entire nation. When we look at statistics, when we look at realistic statistics, I have the most dangerous street in the entire nation, Natural Bridge and Grand. This isn't something that you can't go statistically look up. This isn't something that people are not available or have at their accessibility just randomly without me having to bring a board bill for it or anything else to see where the most dangerous places are. So when we create changes here, we create infrastructure and foundations for other people and other organizations within the nation to try, like we are always out there trying to do what Kansas City is doing in other places to kind of mirror what it is that we've created. But we, unfortunately, generally aren't creating much because you, like myself, are working hard within your area, and we don't really never have funds to be able to have a conversation about it. We can go put sidewalks down, we can put a few barriers up, but we haven't had the opportunity to create real change when it affects businesses and entities that are directly impacted by the decisions that we're able to make financially. So with that, the Hyde Park improvements weren't about a fountain. The idea was to have a splash garden that, like we have downtown, and to have one also in Windsor Park, which is right behind Hyde Park, that will service College Hill as well. If you look at the statistics, College Hill is one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the entire city of St. Louis. My folks, and I know these people, they're killing every single day. We got neighborhoods that are less than 2 alleys away shooting at each other through the gangways. Now, we can easily say that a splash garden wouldn't change that, but that's actually not true.
Alderman Bosley, I want to keep us on point here. Could you just say, what's the $400,000 for? Is it splash pads?
It was for splash pads.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to keep moving because we're still on Alderman Cone, and we've got about 10 more committee members. So Alderman Cone, do you have any further questions?
I kind of stated from the onset, I've got plenty of questions here, but my question for the alderman of the 3rd ward wasn't necessarily what the Hyde Park improvements were for. It is, are we open to other parks receiving allocations in this board bill?
Yes, without a doubt. I think it should be open to all of us. I mean, these are the time where our ideas should be manifested. Whatever you've thought about the whole time you've been an Alderman Cone, nobody knows what your constituents are asking for the most part, but yourself, because you're the person that are listening to everybody's ask. Why shouldn't we be right now being able to say, hey, we can give you that? I'm with you.
Okay. All right. Well, I do want to make an amendment then. I don't know if, again, we'll have the time to do it this morning. So I'm asking that
because we are the Board of Aldermen, sir. Let's do it. Your people deserve this time, because when it's gone, it'll never come back.
Thank you, Alderman. So I appreciate that and your openness to modifying the bill to include those types of changes as well. So the next item was the Mobility and Transportation Master Plan. Jared, is this the plan that's a citywide plan, or is this targeting specific arterials? And if so, which arterials are those and what will be included in the mobility and transportation master plan? Because I think we're also doing one that's kind of synchronizing streetlights and whatnot, but I think that this is different. So can you maybe explain that a little bit further?
Yes, this is citywide, and I don't know, Scott, maybe Scott or Rich. I think Scott might be the best person to elaborate on this.
Sure. Thanks, Alderman. So the goal and the idea of a comprehensive transportation and mobility plan is to look at all the transportation aspects across the whole city. It's to do a lot of public engagement to define what we think the values of the transportation system should be. It's to help us establish what the correct level of funding is that's necessary to maintain the transportation system in a state of good repair. It's to harmonize the existing plans, so things like the ADA transition plan, Brickline Greenway plan. It's to help us prioritize unsafe locations currently, with the goal of reducing injuries and fatalities in the transportation system, help us establish priorities for what needs to get fixed. So it's a lot of things, and I think the funding identified in the bill allows for a robust process and really would do this effort justice. I think we would be informed by many other cities who have done similar types of planning endeavors. And the goal at the end of such a plan is to achieve consensus between what the community across the city desires and what we think the values and priorities that we express, through projects and through maintenance throughout the transportation system. And I would maybe point out that we know we've never been able to do this on a citywide basis. So we do this, in a sense, we do it project to project, but those projects don't exist necessarily within a holistic framework across the city. And so we'd like to build that framework with this transportation and mobility plan.
And to add to that, this is not just simply a report. This is something that is required to access a large pot of money from the bipartisan infrastructure bill to receive funding for implementation of such plans. So we cannot apply for one of the larger grants for street calming and street improvements without this type of plan.
So it's citywide, but is it going to focus on like specific quadrants or streets, or I've shared this with folks offline, but I have Virginia Avenue in my ward that has roughly 7,000 cars per day. It has a major bus line on it, lots of pedestrian traffic. The street hasn't had any type of plan or paving or anything for decades. I've lived in the neighborhood for 20 years, and we did chip and seal on it when I first got elected because that's all we could really afford to do. We've done some rudimentary, street striping, but it still has curb cuts from the 70s probably, let alone, ADA, contemporary ADA curb cuts and things of that nature. Sidewalks are uprooted. There's holes, and sidewalks and streets from, just neglect, disrepair, et cetera. Will a mobility and transportation master plan address neighborhood arterials as well? So, just speaking from my vantage point, those would be streets like, Merrimack and Virginia, that have very large amounts of pedestrian, vehicular, and cyclist traffic, and even, some bus routes as well. How are these things going to be targeted in that master plan?
Sure. So a citywide master plan can't get into sort of project level detail for each street, but it can identify a prioritization of where we need to be focusing future attention. where we need to be investing future funds and where we need to be pursuing external funding sources to make safety and state of good repair improvements. And it helps us make those decisions within a framework that we feel like we've achieved consensus around. So I think, to use the Brickline Greenway planning process as a little bit of a parallel, the first thing they did was put some routes on a map, but those weren't projects, but they did incorporate a vision, and then the projects get into the details. So I think the transportation master plan is a vision towards a safer and better maintained overall transportation system with some priorities within that. But of course, it's not project level detail.
Let me ask you this as someone who has been a former colleague of mine at the Board of Aldermen and has kind of shared in this debate over the years. Would that plan potentially also include the removal of highways from our city?
That's a big question, Alderman. So I think, I don't know if I can get into that before we really, delved into the scope. What I would say is, if you go to the resolution that the Board of Aldermen passed a few years ago related to this topic, I think that resolution is a good starting point for the type of work that this would be. I think it describes a lot of the parameters that the plan would look at. And I think it's a good reference. I don't think, what we'll pursue will be that word for word, but I think it's a good foundation for what the intent of this is.
Okay, I mean, I'm thinking from an environmental justice perspective, from just in general environmental concerns, and also our built environment, crime, public safety, litter. As someone who is highway adjacent, it is very frustrating just to see the amount of debris dumping. And Highway 55 is known nationally as a drug run highway, so there's a lot of drug deals that take place along the interstate. And I won't get into all of that, but it is problematic. And there are cities, as you very well know, that have been going through their planning process, addressing some of these concerns through modifications to the interstate infrastructure that's in their cities. So if we're going through a master planning process, I think that, that would be an opportunity to be able to have those discussions again and bring it to the forefront.
Yeah, it's absolutely a forum for that. And it's a chance to do some co-planning with our partners, Great Rivers Greenway, MoDOT, of course, and to kind of harmonize the goals and priorities of those three entities who, of course, are doing lots of transportation work within the city.
And if we're talking about transportation, I would also hope that Metro is a part of that conversation and not just MoDOT.
Yes, that was a huge miss on my part to forget Bi-State, but of course, Bi-State would be a key collaborator on the project.
Okay, thank you. Plowing residential streets, Jared, you talked about this a little bit, but can you be a little more specific what the $1.3 million is for? Is that buying equipment, or is that just paying staff to plow streets when it snows?
Unfortunately, our streets director had to step off for a parking commission meeting, but it's a combination of both. We have to invest in smaller vehicles to address residential streets, but it would also provide enough flexibility so that while those smaller vehicles are on order, that there could be some contracting services for that work if necessary.
Is there an opportunity, and I know the director isn't on the line at the moment, but I did bring this up in the city council meeting as well. But street sweepers, I know we're moving forward with purchasing some, and a large issue is also related to staffing abilities in the department. which is pretty consistent across most of the city departments at this point. But one of the items, ideas that has been brought to my attention over the years by residents is also doing street sweeping in our alleyways to address some of the concerns that happen, whether it's vegetation growth because of the leaves that don't get picked up behind someone's garage. And I think it's more pervasive in areas like Southeast City and North St. Louis, where there's a lot of either vacant property or investor-owned property where they're not actually paying people to maintain these things because they live in California and don't care. And so, we end up with trash or debris or, yard waste that's piled up behind these properties, and then trees start to grow out of the alleyway. And it becomes very problematic maintaining them going forward. So are we having conversations around that possibility? Because I think that's a very easy quality of life issue that could be, addressed relatively inexpensively. And, kind of similarly with the, plowing of residential streets, would greatly improve some of the quality of life concerns for our citizens.
Yes, thank you for that insight. We've had conversations definitely along these lines, and would point you to the 14 million of the 93 million in economic justice is for neighborhood beautification and CDC capacity building. So we recognize that we not only have to be a better steward of our LRA properties, but other properties that have long been neglected. So not just mowing lots and doing what we're supposed to do, but actually addressing some of the large kind of dumping issues with those funds, whether it's with a contractor or additional staff, or even working with CDCs and allowing them to contract out beautification work. That $14 million realizes, like I said, that it's not enough just to kind of mow a lot, whether it's an out-of-state landlord or an LRA property. We have to do some deep cleaning in our alleys and in our neighborhoods. So that has certainly been at the center of those conversations. And additionally, out of that 14 million, I would expect there are going to be some equipment purchases that make it easier to do that work going forward. So whether it's getting forestry additional equipment or changing the physical landscape of lots so that we don't have to use edgers as much and can do an easier job of mowing them, all while we're working towards getting productive uses in these properties. So at the end of ARPA and utilizing this 14 million, we have less properties that we're responsible for. But that is certainly a priority, making sure that we do a deeper cleaning in places that have been neglected.
Okay, thank you. And then lastly, the sidewalk improvements. How are those being determined? I know you guys said that there's a backlog. Is that the 50-50 program, or is that projects somewhere else? I get concerned when I just see a line item for $6 million, and oftentimes that money ends up going downtown. I'll be very frank about it. And it doesn't end up in our neighborhoods. And our neighborhoods, as I mentioned earlier, just one street hasn't been updated, for decades. It's very problematic for many of the folks that live in North St. Louis, Southeast City, where money just seems to just make moves downtown, but in our neighborhoods not so much. So I'm curious if there's a breakdown of the list that you are referencing that can be provided to the committee.
Sure. I wish the director of streets would be on it to kind of provide more clarity on it. The $6 million comes from an estimate of that backlog of the 3,000 to 4,000 sidewalk improvement projects that have been requested. I respectfully disagree in the sense that I think sidewalks are an issue across the entire city.
They are.
In the Central West End. I see many of our folks that are in motorized wheelchairs having to navigate thoroughfares in the Central West End. So I think this is an issue that affects the entire city. Rich, I don't know if you have more clarity on the locations of the backlog, but that might be more. I know that list lives more so in the streets department.
So alls I would just add on to Jared, I think you gave a good synopsis. The note that I see is 3,893 open service requests related to sidewalks as of June 1st, 22. A lot of it is 50-50 sidewalk program. It is definitely citywide, Alderman, and also that plays into the results of our ADA transition plan that we're currently working on, which I know you're aware of as you're on the Capital Committee, but that is our document which requires us to have a plan to address every program the city operates to be ADA accessible by federal law. So this would definitely address both of those items citywide.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bradley. Alderman, we're going to move on because we've got a lot of
That was the last of my questions for
That's
now.
good. That's good. I'd like to point out, I'll take a point of privilege since I'm chairing this and say, Alderman, I don't know when the last time you traversed downtown was, but our sidewalks and streets are in as bad a disrepair as the rest of the neighborhoods of the city. So I take umbrage with the fact that you're saying that all these funds are flowing to the downtown district when candidly they are not. In fact, downtown's not even eligible for the 50-50 sidewalk program. Thank you. Okay, Alderwoman Boyd, you're up.
I don't have any questions in regards to what Alderman Cone was saying, and I understand his focus is his ward, but I know Alderman Bosley, Alderwoman Walker, Alderwoman Keys, the Alderman Todd, they can say the same things, that their areas have been neglected for years and they haven't had anything done. Alderman Lampy, so people
and Evans,
all these people, they having the same issues. So in regards to this bill, I think that it's imperative that we look at that to bring those dollars to start the projects. In Capital Committee, we did discuss, they were talking about pulling some dollars from this bill to look at doing other things beside what was needed, and that was the streets. And Nancy Cross did make it clear that the mayor's office is very adamant about making sure those projects are completed. If they even have to go to contracting people out to help do the job with streets. So I just don't think we need to pull this. We need to keep it where it is and look at other funding to get stuff done. Since Alderman Bosley and Jared did say that it's other dollars that we can tap into. So, I guess that's what we're looking at, because I'm just like, we need to move on this, because I know we have other bills, but we need to make sure that these projects are taken care of. And it seems like the departments are very in tune to what is needed and how the process will work. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Narayan.
Thank you, Vice Chair Coder. I'll keep this brief. I want to share some of the sentiment that my colleague from the 25th had to say about the PSAPs. I know that here over on the western side of the city, sometimes when people call 911, they actually get connected with St. Louis County Dispatch, and that can lead to some unfortunate circumstances. We've had residents here actually die while the city and the county were figuring out who to dispatch. I'm not sure why they wouldn't both just dispatch and figure it out on the back end, but I'm hoping that this new PSAP can address some of that. I'm also a bit frustrated, and I imagine that my predecessor, Scott Ogilvie on the call may understand some of my frustration here for many, many years, we've been asking for funds to come in to do something, anything with McCausland, particularly just south of 40 on McCausland. It's a very narrow stretch. It's a very, very overutilized north-south route in the city. We've needed traffic calming on it for quite some time. It's windy, it's dangerous. The proximity to Forest Park makes it, I think, kind of a perfect place to really look at how we're engaging in street calming and things of that nature, because essentially one of the most popular north-south routes in the city is completely unusable for pedestrians and bicyclists, even though you are right next to the nicest park in the world. And to have heard for years and years that we can't do anything to address these issues on McCausland because we're going to need some massive federal funds to do so. And then we get this massive federal funds, and to see it not even be addressed is incredibly frustrating.
Nursing schools. So
Alderwoman Keys, could you go on mute, Alderwoman Keys?
Alder, whoever's, someone go ahead and mute themselves. Sorry,
She did.
Alderman, go ahead.
And so I know that the alderman from the third said he was open to some amendments on this, and I hope that he will remain open to an amendment to include McCausland as part of these streets that we need to be calming, because we've been told over here for 20 years that this couldn't be done without some sort of massive federal grant, something like that. And we have that at our disposal right now, and to completely be ignored on that front is alarmingly frustrating. And I'll certainly be bringing what I will consider a friendly amendment, because we are looking at a traffic calming bill, and I'm talking about adding one location to this to address the issues on McCausland, and hopefully to make it more accessible to everyone trying to get from north to south in this city. And with that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Ryan. Alderwoman Evans.
Alderman Coder, or Chair Coder, I just want to make sure you're going through the seniority list correctly.
I was sorry, I was going off of the sheet. Who's next? Are you next, Alderman?
Well, I was kind to the Alderman from the 24th, but I am after.
I apologize, Alderman. I was using the list on the on our agenda, which I guess has us out of order. Go ahead, Alderman Gunther.
All right, thank you. And I will be quick, but I have to run and do something so I wanted to get this in before I had to make a quick break. So yeah, thank you, Vice Chair Coder. I appreciate you. Let me slide in here. My question is basically just for Mr. Bradley or Mr. Ogilvy, is in this the $3.5 million safety improvements at the top 10 crash locations. And we were given from planning department, we were giving vehicle crash spots, the top list, and bicycle and pedestrian top spots. On our vehicle crash hotspots, number 4 out of 24 is Gravois, Russell, and Tucker. And on our bicycle and pedestrian hotspots, number 12 is Jefferson, Gravois, and Sydney. And I bring these up because Scott Ogilvy knows very well the conversation we've been having for 5 years about some sort of improvement on Gravois because of not only number 4 in vehicle crashes and fatalities and number 12 in bicycle fatalities and crashes, but on Gravois from Russell to Jefferson is a death trap. So my question is, will we include that stretch as one of these top 10, as is written out, saying that the top 10 crash spots? So is that included? And it could be either Bradley or Ogilvy.
Scott, go ahead and give your opinion and I'll add on.
Sure. So what we did was kind of an initial pass on the hotspots. I think once funding is allocated and we know how much funding is available, we're going to do a more detailed analysis to see where we can make an impact. Some of those hotspot locations overlap with projects we already have underway, such as Brickline Greenway on North Grand, like that's a hotspot area. And a lot of those safety issues will be addressed by that project. So I think we're going to be looking at locations where we don't currently have a project that overlaps, where we think there is an impact we can make with the funding available. And I'll let maybe Rich follow up on that.
And so what I would say, thanks, Scott. What I would say, Alderman, is, you know, I want everybody to keep this in mind, that this is a start. I mean, we have to start somewhere in order to keep this moving. And so at the end of the day, you can see by the data that we track this information. We're aware of this information. We know these are issues. The location that, you know, you've noted is on the list, and it is high on the list. And so I would think there's definitely a great probability that that would be within the first amount here. But again, this is a start, and we have to start somewhere without saying we can handle every one of these all at one time. So I think, you know, just knowing that this is a priority for the mayor and this is a priority for all of us, I would feel comfortable knowing that it's going to continue and we're going to keep working through this until we address all of these.
Okay, so that's not a yes. Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna say, out of 24 listed top spots, number 4 is Gravois and Russell. So I've been pushing for that. I've been on the scene personally of a number of fatal crashes on that stretch of Gravois. It's very dangerous. We've had meetings with Ogilvy and MoDOT. We've had meetings with the residents. So I'm just, since everyone's taking time to advocate for their areas here, I'm going to say I really believe number 4 deserves some attention. So that's all I'll say. Thank you again, Vice Chair Coder, for letting me jump in.
No problem, Alderman. I apologize for skipping over you and for pointing that out. I've got the correct list in front of me now. All right, with that, we'll go on to Alderman Todd. Okay, I think I think he left earlier. And I'll note before we keep moving in speakers, if members of the public who wanted to speak but have time constraints due to the length of the meeting, you can submit your comments to us in writing. Just check the chat. I know our clerk put her email in there. It's boaclerk@stlewis-mo.gov. If you want to submit comments, they'll get forwarded to members of the committee. All right, Alderwoman Evans.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't really have a comment to say. It's just that I just hope that they go on with all of the amendments to the board bill and do the improvements that's slated in there to take place. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderwoman Peel.
Thank you. I do not have any comments.
All right, Alderman Gross.
Just a couple of brief comments. I think that the way I'm kind of seeing this bill is that it's kind of clearing the backlog of some projects and some things that have been kind of done for a while. I mean the things that have been needed for a while, I should say. But I do think, though, and I'm not going to, this is going to be very brief because I know it's kind of outside the bill, but I think we need to kind of maybe think of better ways to you know, and this is part of the citywide streets plan, I'm sure, but, you know, do kind of bigger projects at the same time. And I don't know if it's contracting with people for like design build at the same time, because it does seem like, you know, we have a lot of these steps where we have to study things and then we have to design things and then we have to, you know, contract out for things. And I don't know if there are contractors that we could just do all three for whole big swaths of the city at the same time and do things more efficiently. And you know, if you guys would like to address that here, that's fine. I'll defer to the chair if you'd want to take those comments. So I know that's kind of outside the scope of this bill. But briefly then, my comments on this bill, you know, the things that are in it. I'm hearing what you're saying, that, you know, there's kind of several pots of money, so that we think that, you know, we'll be able to, you know, get the things that are done in some of these hot spots, you know, and I understand that you're not wanting to commit to that here. But, you know, I think we would like the commitments, but I would say that I guess I'm satisfied with your rationale and your explanations for it. And I guess I'm comfortable that I think that this, you know, will solve those problems. Definitely think the public safety access point call center thing is absolutely crucial. I would also say, I know we were contacted, and I have some residents here that very much want to see some funding go to some other projects that have been discussed with this bill. I understand that the mayor's office's position that, you know, we want to keep this clean and keep it focused on infrastructure. And I think there's some merit to that argument, but I think some of the things that have been brought up, you know, some of the institutions in North St. Louis that could use our help, you know, I think we really need to figure out a way to help them. And that's all I have. If you would like to address, Rich Bradley, that my comment, or if the chair would allow, if not, you know,
No, go right ahead. Mr. Bradley, I'd like to respond.
Thank you. So as far as the way we do work around here, the way design bid build is required by the city charter, we are prohibited from doing design build by the city charter. So when we do all of our work, it is required by Missouri state law that new public works work is designed by a licensed professional engineer. And so that is what is done. When we do work with the ability of the street department, if you will, that is considered maintenance work. We still engineer that, and the street department provides the labor to do that work. And what that benefits us, as opposed to contracting it out, is we pay for the materials, but you don't pay for the labor because it is already within the city's general budget. So we try as much as we can to stretch the very few dollars that we all have for capital needs by utilizing in-house resources where we have them and contracting through the approved processes where we need them.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Any follow-up, Alderman Gross?
Not at this time. I'll think about
All
it.
right, thank you. Alderman Lappy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Most of my questions were asked by the alderman from the 25th ward. I just do want to state, like, this bill, as I understand it, this bill should have been moving a while ago, and I would hate to get bogged down in a bunch of amendments for a bunch of things and all over the city. If we go down that path, like, I mean, there are things that I would like to look at too, but I think that our imperative is to pass this bill so that we can start moving on the things that the city so desperately needs. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderwoman Keys.
Good morning, Vice Chair Coder and chair members, automatic board members. I am excited at the probability and possibility of all of the things that this board bill can bring. And so with that, I have no questions, and I yield.
Thank you. Alderwoman Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. I have no questions or comments.
Okay, thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Bosley, it's your bill. What do you want to do here? You want to hold this, take a vote? Let me know. Is Alderman Bosley still with us?
Mr.
Okay,
Chair,
well,
point of order.
We have speakers. I got to go down our speaker list. Anything else, Alderman Cone?
We do have amendments in the folder to consider before
Okay.
passage.
Thank you for pointing that out. Let me see here.
My apologies. My phone has went in and out about 3 times today.
Okay.
It sucks.
So Alderman, I see there's some amendments in here. Are these
Multiple.
your whose amendments are? Did you draft these, or are these Alderman from the 25th?
It depends on what amendments they are. If it's amendments with business names in them, they are mine.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, Alderman, are you looking for a vote on this today, or do you want to hold it for additional work?
Well, so the fact that we have other alder people who would like to have projects in their ward also added to this, something that they believe they also have the ability to kind of help. One of the big issues is right now, and I hope, Mr. Chairman, that possibly you kind of understand this as well. We're giving out all these ARPA funds, and we as alder people really have not dug into the different projects in our ward that affect us every day as we walk out the house. Those individuals who are asking for streets to be paved, folks that have been asking for the last 4 or 5 years, that if you just gave me a chance, things would dramatically change within the area that I represent based on the programming that they have. These things are available to us now. Generally, we have to tell them that you got to go find a grant or you got to go to the federal government. So with the aldermen that are coming here now, like Alderman Narayan and, the folks that came right before him and wanted to put their respective projects potentially on the bill, I will say without a doubt, there's $6 million in sidewalks right now. And we just talked about sidewalks. If we went through every single person who's asked for a sidewalk in the last 10 years, you can find way more than $6 million that has not been allocated. If you just go through our funds right now and look at the alderman who's allocated funding for sidewalks just over the last few years, those sidewalks haven't been completed. And that's not because the individuals don't want to complete them. It's just the truth that, like the mayor's office said and other folks, we don't have the capacity to be able to complete all of these different projects. In a few years, we're supposed to have all these things done. And we've allocated funding over the last 2 or 3 years to have sidewalks and other projects done that require concrete. And they have said, once again, we really don't have the people, the workforce that's needed to be able to complete these potential projects. So with those things being said, and us having multiple aldermen who also have experienced the exact same thing, which is the reason why I kind of left this open in a way, if after we spend these funds, we got $900,000 left. And we really, I don't think there is one project specifically that we as a board can allude to and say that we've all collectively worked on and worked on together and said we're going to work on this particular thing. I think it gets interesting.
Okay, so I guess
with that being said, what I would like to do, because I do have speakers here today, I like these folks to be able to put what it is that they like to do on record. Yes, I did want to vote on this today. And I've asked other members not other members in the committee, but this has been out here for some time. And now that we're having conversations about what it is we could particularly change to potentially impact our wards and other parts of the city in a great manner, I think it'd be important for us to have those discussions as well, lay them out on the table. And if we're not going to take a vote on it today, we'll take a vote on it next week, but bring all those other people's ideas into the board bill and amend it, and let's make it something that we all can push out of committee and be happy about. With the businesses that you have right here, these people work very, very hard for the city of St. Louis. We right now are talking about trying to do what we can to stop all these car thefts. We got 400 to 500 car thefts just in the last 12 months.
I get it. we're going to go through the speakers because I want to give the members of the public an opportunity to talk. And after we've heard from them, we'll make a decision as to whether we're going to go through these amendments and take a vote today or hold this for further consideration and allow maybe a clean committee sub with some of these changes. So I'm going to go down our speaker list here.
If you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, for those folks who did want to add things, that they can send those, not necessarily only to the clerk, but just to the members of the board as well. So if there is some things that we can amend today, we can just knock those out. If not, we can wait. Just because we are starting the conversation, we have already had aldermen that have spoken and said these are things that they like to see. Let's just keep cracking it.
Right. Thanks, Alderman. Okay, we're going to go down the speaker list. The first member of the public who's asked to speak here is Dr. Paulette Sankofa. Dr. Sankofa, I think you're still with us. All right, there you are. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I think I still remember the truth.
Good. All right. Well, good morning to you. It is still technically morning. Ma'am, you've got 3 minutes. Go right ahead.
I'm going to take 2 seconds of those minutes and say, I do not envy this job that you all have. Okay. I'm the founder and CEO of Peace Education, Action, Compassion, and Empowerment, Weaving Wholeness. For short, Peace Weaving Wholeness. And our focus is on an often overlooked population, women and men aged 60 and older, especially those that want to age in place. And I've been listening intently about some of the things that you've been talking about. I mean, simple things like sidewalks are so important for people who may be concerned about falling issues. We've worked a lot on the digital divide because during the first of the pandemic, we reached out to one of our funders and told her we cannot meet in person. I need some computers. And we were able to get Chromebooks to hand out to people with them making a commitment to participate online. We did just hand them to them and say, okay, these are yours, do something with them. No, we worked to train. I went into one apartment complex in what I call a hazmat suit so that I could work with people and try to teach them how to use computers. And what we found was it made a major difference in their lives and in the children's lives that they were taking care of while parents were still trying to work during the pandemic. We offer classes that are grounded in art and culture, but we do something a little bit different than most senior programs. Our program is set up like a university. You have a fall semester, you have a winter, spring semester, and then you have a summer semester. And people really like that because they have choices about what they take. Every semester is different. We don't just have, the same classes over and over and over again. And we talk to the participants, try to find out what they want, what they need. And we're what I call a living organization because we try to stay in touch with not only what the people need, but know what's going on out in the community so that we can create classes and information and resources around that. We're asking for funding that will support us in our ongoing work because we would like to have, to serve even more older adults. And normally we serve an average of 120 individuals a year because some people take a one-day class, some people take a 6-week class. And we do fun things too. We've had card parties because everything can't be so serious. And we try to do, like we have an online New Year's Eve party pretty much every year. And they come and get a goodie bag from us with all kind of treats and stuff in it. And we get online and have a party because a lot of seniors, we don't like to be out at night driving. and it's not particularly safe, all the time for people who are in their 70s and 80s to be out at night. So,
thank you, Doctor. If you could please wrap it up.
Okay, that's it.
All right. Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
All right. Next on our speaker list is Miss Jen DeRose. I know Miss DeRose had to jump and she sent some comments via email. Members of the committee, please check your inbox on those. After that, we've got Lois Conley. Lois Conley.
Oh,
There
thank
you are,
you.
ma'am. Ms.
Thank you.
Conley, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, you go ahead. You recognize you've got 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Good morning. I am Lois Conley. I'm the founder and the executive director at the Griot Museum of Black History, which, so I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak, but also want to thank Alderman Bosley for his enthusiastic effort to secure unrestricted general operating support for the museum. We opened in 1997 after purchasing.
What?
Did we lose?
Is everything gone?
Did we lose Ms. Conley?
I believe we did.
Yeah, it just said that she left the meeting.
Okay, we'll come back to her if she returns. Somebody keep an eye on that for me. Next on our list, I see a Brian Kruger. Is Mr. Kruger still with us? Okay, moving on. Next on our list, Kayla Vaughn. Ms. Vaughn.
Yes,
Okay, Ms. Vaughn, you're recognized. Could you, all right, well, Ms. Vaughn, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
absolutely. I
All
do.
right, great. Thank you,
Thank
Ms. Vaughn.
you.
You're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I'm here in support of the Griot Museum. I believe that this bill should be passed. There are obviously many important things that will fund. The Griot Museum should be one of them. I believe the Griot Museum should be funded for $500,000. I am grateful to Lois Conley and the Griot for educating me about Black history, and in particular about the many Black St. Louisans who have played important roles in St. Louis's rich history. My formal education was very much deficient in understanding the contributions and the influences to the city's history and the country as a whole. It exists in a part of our city which many consider to be completely decimated. And certainly it is in the old Team 4 area, the depletion area. Things are changing, which is great. The Griot should be rewarded and heralded for its very existence. It's a beautiful building. It was saved by Lois Conley, her board and allies, and it's an enduring monument. For 25 years, the Griot has steadfastly been there, educating school children and the general public about Black history, many famous Black people who have come from St. Louis, and many unknown or little known citizens who have left their marks on the city and the country as a whole. If you have not visited the Griot, you really must. You may not be aware of the things going on there. Very recently, an Andrew Mellon Foundation project supported the planning phase of the Black Herstory Art Project, which is underway. A major project, an outdoor sculpture by a famous, internationally famous architect, Sir David Adjaye, is under construction. And the arts organization Counterpublic has chosen the Griot as the northern anchor for their installation opening in April. It's going to go down Jefferson from Sugarloaf Mountain on the south all the way to the Griot. Nationally, the Griot Museum has been much more recognized than it has been locally. It is time for the city of St. Louis to claim and support one of its jewels. Please fund the Griot in the amount of $500,000. The funds are there. They are important.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vaughn. All right, next on our list, we've got Mr. Mala Rogers, who I see there. Ms. Rogers, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Always, I do.
Thank you. All right, you're recognized for 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to come before the HUD and Zoning Committee. And I am in support of Alderman Brandon Bosley's bill, and particularly Board Bill 120, the allocation of a line item specifically for the Griot Museum of $500,000 is what I'm most excited about. And like Dr. Sankofa, I don't envy the job that you all have with determining where this money is going to be spent. Last year, the Griot celebrated its 25th anniversary without nearly the kind of fanfare that it deserved. This visionary Lois Conley has been tirelessly toiling at 2505 St. Louis Avenue to preserve and present the rich and glorious history of descendants of Africa. The nationally recognized unique institution has proven its worth. It's been around for 25 years, and it's past time for us locally to invest in its longevity and its viability. I know that there are citizens who are wondering where all this ARPA money is going, and I see you all grappling with that today, and I know that the entire board is grappling with that. And I think there has to be accountability, and that's been both the campaign promise of the mayor and the president of the Board of Alder, that there's going to be transparency, there's going to be accountability. And I think particularly after the scandal last year, you all seem to be really, really grappling with those issues and trying to put in measures to minimize that. But I guarantee you that if Lois Conley gets $500,000, you are going to know exactly where every penny is, because she's going to let you know, but you also see the corner of 25th and St. Louis Avenue be magnificently transformed. So before I end, I want to just urge you to do two things. One is to visit the museum if you haven't already, and two is to give serious consideration to the allocation of $500,000 to the St. Louis Griot Museum for Black History. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Chairman Coder, if I could jump in real quick, it does appear that Ms. Conley is back on the line.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman Narayan. Ms. Conley, we lost you there. And we wanna
Yes, I'm sorry. I have this, again, Wi-Fi issue.
That's
Thank
okay.
you so much
You
just
can
finished up.
start over. We'll give you three. You're already sworn in. We'll give you 3 minutes. You go right ahead.
Okay, I'll just say that I'll start with during our 25-year existence, only a few elected officials saw the fit to support the Griot Museum, and then only with program grants from local funders. But program grants are insufficient to do the kind of work we need to do at the Griot Museum. We are poised to bring St. Louis out of the shadows and into the place of prominence that it deserves. The time is right for you to support the Griot, and the availability of these ARPA funds is the perfect source from which to draw that support. I respectfully request this committee to support Alderman Bosley's request for an allocation of $500,000 of unrestricted funds, not program funds that are specifically identified specific arts projects. But a significant amount of these funds would be used to help facilitate additional infrastructure build out of our 2 outdoor installations. These would include surveys and design services, site preparation, connecting sidewalks and walkways, lighting, landscaping, safety, security, traffic control, parking, and other measures that will help us and ensure our ability to expand our audience and attract even more visitors to St. Louis's premier Black cultural gem on the corner on St. Louis Avenue and 25th Street, right in the heart of North St. Louis. Your support of this request is a win-win for the Griot Museum of Black History, for the St. Louis Place neighborhood, and for the city of St. Louis. I hope and pray that your response will be affirmative. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Ms. Conley. All right, moving on down our list of public speakers, I see Ms. Evie Hemphill. Ms. Hemphill, are you with us still?
Yes.
Good morning for one more minute. Good morning, Ms. Hemphill. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, go ahead. You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you. I appreciate the chance to share my perspective on Board Bill 120. I'm pleased to see this investment in infrastructure. I welcome many of the things this bill promises to address on the infrastructure side of things, but we clearly cannot stop with Board Bill 120. The carnage on our roads will not end if Board Bill 120 is all you do. Without investing significantly in road user education and driver accountability as well, many, many more of us will be grievously injured and killed. So many of us experience the growing traffic violence in St. Louis on a daily basis. But particularly as a teacher of free Learn to Ride and Earn a Bike youth classes with the nonprofit St. Louis Bee Works, I am begging for you to hear us and do much, much more. It is not okay that our children and teachers are subjected to drivers flying down side streets as we simply try to cross what should be a quiet street to practice our outdoor drills and bring some joy to these great kids' lives. They deal with enough hard things in this world. Can't we ensure they can cross the street? It is not okay that even in a city park, I've had a driver crunch over our bright cones on our bike course for kids and scream at me in front of these precious children who deserve to ride their bikes in a park that he wants to park in the shade and we're in his way. It is not okay that time after time, vehicles are blocking the crosswalks and curb cutaways our children and teachers depend on to walk from one sidewalk to another. Time after time, we report these issues and nothing really changes. It is not okay that other B-Works teachers and I are frequently frantically waving our arms, standing in the middle of the street, ready to sacrifice life and limb, begging drivers to stop at stop signs and wait for 5 or 10 seconds max for a group of children to safely cross. Way too often, St. Louis drivers do not stop, even with kids present. I've taught B-Works youth classes for nearly 12 years now, but this past fall, one of my worst nightmares happened. One of my Earn a Bike graduates from the summer was hit by a driver while he was in a crosswalk and had the walking sign. Up until then, he loved riding his bike. His mom had even messaged me after he graduated, telling me how he loved going to pick up last-minute items for dinner for her after school. But this driver not only left my former student seriously injured, he left him in the street. He just left him there. This is not okay. And so I strongly believe Board Bill 120 needs to be paired with significant investment in road user education and driver accountability. That's how we can truly improve safety for children, bus riders, bikers, and yes, drivers too, in our shared city. If we don't, we will not have addressed this problem in a holistic or meaningful way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hemphill. Next on our list is Miss Virginia, is it Drew? Drewy? Still with us? Okay, she's no longer with us. All right, Patrick Vandertween from B-Works. You there? I think you're still there, Patrick.
I am. Yeah.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, you're recognized. You got 3 minutes.
So my name is Patrick Vandertween. I'm the director of St. Louis B-Works. And so B-Works is committed to the youth in St. Louis through experiential learning. Our 7 staff teachers and dozens of volunteers each year teach hundreds of youth how to use a bicycle, each student earning a free bicycle, lock set, and helmet. We've been doing this for free since 1986. Our family, staff, and volunteers are tired of being terrified in our neighborhoods by drivers. While I applaud that you are taking action, I am concerned that the current bill is continuing down the same road of how we look at our crashes involving pedestrians and cyclists. Physical infrastructure is not the end-all, be-all way to solve these immense problems. Mr. McMiller was riding his bicycle in a bike lane when a driver hit him and left him to die on South Grand. Mr. Hamid was in a crosswalk when a driver ran a red light, hit him, left him to die. The names and the stories of horrific crashes go on and on and on. This bill is a start to a long-term solution. But without follow-up bills that include education enforcement being funded and supported by the city, this bill will do nothing. Last, I would ask that the alderman who introduced this bill remove his name as sponsor. Having someone who actively testified against distracted driving rule changes introduce this bill is an insult to those of us fighting for safer streets and could be considered a tell on how seriously the city is taking this problem. Having funding set aside for this Alderman's Ward's Park in this bill, an even bigger tell. Board Bill 120 was born on the back of pedestrians and cyclists being killed by reckless driving in record numbers. I ask you to remember this. Thank you for your time.
Apologies, I'm back. I'm sorry about that. All right, next on our list is Eric Ellingson. Mr. Ellingson. Hello. You're Mr. Ellingson, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, you're recognized. You got 3 minutes.
Dear Mr. Kennedy and members of the board, Madam Chairman, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today.
I'm an assistant professor at Washington University. I'm speaking today in enthusiastic support of the ARPA funds directed to the Griot Museum of Black History. My expertise is a boots on the ground view of cities, public spaces, and socially engaged art and design practices. I live in Ward 8, Tower Grove East, and have been collaborating with the Griot since the spring of 2018. The Griot Museum is a cultural anchor in St. Louis. It resonates love and hope and art and scholarship, not just for North St. Louis or BIPOC communities in St. Louis, but for all of us who call St. Louis City home. The Griot Museum also has a regional and national presence, as has already been mentioned, particularly as a result of competitions linked to Monument Lab in Philadelphia, Counterpublic in exhibition in St. Louis. We're working with Sir David Adjaye. He's the architect of the National Museum of African American History and Culture at the Smithsonian. St. Louis, the Griot helps put St. Louis on the map and the public eye for reasons we can be proud of and not apologetic for as a city. The Griot does in action what other cultural institutions merely aspire to in spirit. Considering the development of the NGA and inevitable financial dislocations this will cause, investing in the Griot now will make sure the cultural legacy of Black and African Americans in St. Louis is preserved and grows. As a scholar and practitioner that focuses on cities, places, and people, the Griot Museum is an urban neuron, a cultural neuron node that increases the cultural intelligence of our city. Taking the Brick Line as an example, St. Louis City has circulated visionary renderings of the future of connections across the city, glossy images, and in many of these images, the Griot Museum is a background. But this funding opportunity of $500,000 is a chance to put our cultural institutions in the foreground. Over the past 6 years, I have personally worked with multiple generations of Black creatives that meet at the Griot Museum and are now cultural ambassadors that link our city to Chicago, Boston, Atlanta, New York City, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and Berlin, Germany. These are Black influences that cut their chops and practice their crafts through the Griot Museum programming. The Griot is not a background for larger urban visions, it is a foreground. It is a conduit of energy, a node focused on repair and research. It increases the intelligence of our city. On a personal note, over the holidays, through Griot Museum programming, my children have written postcards sent to inmates. My Washington University students actively learn with and at the Griot. The Griot has given me an opportunity to live the social justice issues that I believe in and that are a lot easier to say than to do. My students, family, and I understand history better and our role in shaping history because of the Griot. 100 years from now, we need the Griot to be here throbbing art and life in 2123. Your $500,000 investment is one lever that can help make this happen. Cultural philosopher Raymond Williams says to be truly radical is to make hope possible rather than despair convincing. And this is how the Griot Museum operates. Representative Bosley articulated the timing of this funding opportunity.
Professor, if you could wrap it up, please. You're over your 3 minutes.
Got it. This is the last sentence. Every day, my family and I are proud to live in St. Louis City because we believe it when our representatives advocate for making the impossible possible, not being frugal when opportunities arrive to pay the past forward by investing in public cultural institutions like the Griot now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, next on our list is Mr. Gaines. Mr. Gaines, I see you there. Mr. Gaines, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right, you're recognized for 3 minutes, sir.
President Megan Green, Vice Chair Mr. Coder, members of the HUD Committee, and other attendees. I was going to say good morning. Obviously, it's now good afternoon. My name is Richard Gaines. I am a lifetime resident of the city of St. Louis, and I am here to speak on behalf of the Griot Museum of Black History, the city's first museum of Black history, formed in 1997, and now celebrating 25 continuous years of service to this community. The museum's consistent evolution, despite minimal financial rewards and resources, has consistently earned state and national recognition, as well as the Griot has received a plethora of foundation support and private gifts to support its own fairs and other revenue because of its program offerings. However, as most nonprofit institutions without major public funding, the museum struggles to maintain its operation. Now, due to a dramatic set of circumstances of events, the GRIO finds itself with a unique set of concert opportunities that can prove pivotal to the museum's next 25 years. The development of the NGA next door, as well as the expected $3 billion plus development of the surrounding area over the next 10 years, the choosing of the GRIO, the grounds of the GRIO to house the first outdoor sculpture of Sir David Adjaye. This is the designer of the African American Museum and Cultural Center on the Smithsonian Mall in Washington, D.C. And the total funding of the sculpture by Lee Broughton, valued at $1 million. These circumstances and others has led to one of the most significant outdoor structures in the world being built in St. Louis. It is imperative that we support this development process to the fullest. The monies, excuse me, the monetary request is for more than a work of art, but names St. Louis again, as in the past, a leader in the worldwide community of visual art. By helping to fund this organization and these elements that have been presented to you this morning and will continue to be presented, the city of St. Louis does everything it can begin to do to change the vernacular and the belief of what a city, a full city should be. So I, as well as many others who have visited and worked with this museum, ask that this board do all that it can to fund the infrastructure for development for philosophical and real reasons for change in this city. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Gaines, for your comments. All right, next on our list is Edna Hankey Pipes. Edna Hankey Pipes, still with us? Okay, and last but certainly not least.
How are you? How are you?
Oh, Miss Hankey Pipes. All right.
Thank you.
Ms. Pipes, do you have video?
No, I'm on my cell. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's all right. You can go ahead. You've got 3 minutes to address the committee.
And thank you so very much.
Oh, sorry, I have to swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you can go right ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on Board Bill 120.
Mr. Chair, is it possible to see Miss Edna?
No, she doesn't have any video, but she's been patiently waiting, so we're going to go ahead and let her talk anyway. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good afternoon. The decisions housing, urban development, and zoning make and implement influence and impact the growth and development of children and their future, their safety, health, and education. Consequently, the growth and development of the city of St. Louis. We send children to school to learn financial literacy, money management, critical thinking, economics, character development, and humanity, but give them mixed messages when these important life lessons are not reflected in the policies that you promote. It is important, such as those that we see, that the St. Louis Arch, the Missouri Historical Society, Fox Theater, the Dome have, but again, not in North St. Louis, nor locations such as the Griot Black History Museum. I got a little nervous. I am asking you, and not only you, on behalf of our children in the city and the children who live in North St. Louis, to advocate for, promote, and implement policies that provide opportunities to North St. Louis and the Griot Black History Museum. The service that they provide our children is immeasurable. All our children, not just children of color, but all our children. God bless and thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your comments. All right, and last but certainly not least on our speaker list is Malik Gay. Is Malik Gay available?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. My name is Usman Gay. I'm a recent addition to the Griot Museum team as part of their Growing Griot Fellowship. And I was just coming here today to talk a little bit about asking the committee to support the museum, not only as the cultural institution that it is today and the support that it has garnered and the impact that it has had throughout the community, but in being able to provide that support and being able to expand its mission forward. The Griot, as has been mentioned earlier in this meeting, is going through a lot of change and is having a lot of very unique opportunities here. But in future, we hope that it's a space that can continue to expand to become a center, not only for the community, but for further research and engagement in Black cultural life. There's a lack of sort of support that has been given towards this space and other cultural institutions like it. And it is very important as the city continues to grow and expand that we consider the Black Cultural Institution should be at the foreground of the work of trying to expand St. Louis's cultural vibrancy. So I really hope that you all will be able to support the Griot Museum in their endeavors both today and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gay, for your testimony. Mr. Gay, I should have asked you this at the beginning, but was your testimony the truth?
Yes, the whole truth.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, we have a couple of folks who've messaged me who I know have waited patiently, who said they signed up to speak, but didn't make the list. And I want to make sure we recognize them in the order they reached out. So first is Liz Kramer. Liz, thank you for waiting patiently and for reaching out to me. Is your testimony going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
It is.
Okay, you are recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vice Chair, and to members of the committee for sitting through this long and I know very complicated time. My name is Liz Kramer. I'm currently the co-chair of the City of St. Louis's Community Mobility Committee. The members of the HUDS committee have heard from our committee via letter, but I'm here to reiterate our enthusiastic support for using these once-in-a-lifetime funds for critical infrastructure needs as outlined in the original bill to make walking, biking, taking transit, and even driving safer and easier across our city. These funds, particularly the supporting of the ADA improvements and traffic calming along those previously prioritized arterials for repaving, like the dangerous stretches of Jefferson and Goodfellow, the safety improvements at the high crash locations that were discussed earlier, the funding to support the efforts along North Grand connected to the extremely exciting Brickline Greenway, and the $1.25 million for the mobility and transportation plan are what we have been hoping to see. These changes are about people, and they're about people's experiences getting around our city. We want to see a St. Louis where we think about transportation comprehensively, where we're looking across the city, beyond ward boundaries, and across different modes. And we want to think about transportation proactively, planning for a long-term strategy that allows not just for good design and building, but good maintenance and education. As Alderman Bosley said, this is a time to try things we haven't tried before. And honestly, these approaches are new to our city, and they're proven ways that we can address the dangerous experience of getting around our city and our neighborhoods. In our previous letters, we've raised some concerns about the execution of these efforts, and I want to point to those again. We want to ensure that this process, particularly in selecting sites and determining what interventions happen, is transparent and involves substantive community engagement. We want to see these efforts align with the nearly completed ADA transition plan, and I was so pleased to hear Mr. Bradley speak on that. We also want to see the streets department supported to manage a plan of this magnitude as proposed in the bill, which we believe is a new challenge for them and may require additional skills like staff with a focus on multimodal transportation. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, we expect that this funding will be distributed in a way that responds to the historic disinvestment in parts of our city, particularly on the north side. We're also looking forward to learning more about the opportunities to fund efforts for education and enforcement from other sources, as we believe these are truly crucial to the change we want to see. Once funded, This bill, we expect that we will be working in partnership with the board, the mayor's office, streets, BPS, and residents across the city to bring these efforts to life across our sidewalks and streets, and to see other changes like allocating ongoing, sustainable funding to address these infrastructure needs in the long term. Thank you so much, and best of luck figuring this out.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. That was right on time. All right, and then I know Mr. Bryson also reached out and mentioned that he had signed up to speak but didn't make the list. So, Mr. Bryson, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Charles, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair and members of the HUD's Committee on the opportunity to present and testify today. TrailNet, which, as you all know, is the regional nonprofit advocating for safe streets for all, highly recommends the Housing, Urban Development, and Zoning Committee pass out Board Bill 120 without amending it for several reasons. First, Board Bill 120 appears to be singularly an infrastructure bill, which is sorely needed and has been sorely needed in this city for a very long time. It does not appear really to contain any other items other than what has been spoken briefly about the Hyde Park Park. Secondly, we strongly believe the mayor's office and city departments have gone to great lengths to determine the appropriate level of funding for each of the line items in a way to make changes significant to those line items would affect the quality and timing of the work that is sorely needed around infrastructure in our community. Third, some of the line items create great opportunity to get something done quickly, shovel ready. For example, the line item has been talked about earlier, which featured the Board of Public Service line item to design and implement traffic calming and road improvements based upon completed traffic studies, has been needed to be done for years. And there are a number of traffic studies that have been done, but have been shelved because of lack of resources. This can be done quickly because, again, these are shovel-ready projects, ready for neighborhood needs. Lastly, as I read into the line item, I was struck by the level of funding that may be geographic in nature based on the long-term needs as residents of the city. Based on my being a long-term resident of the city, I know this is a delicate balance. Any attempt, and we saw that earlier, any attempt to amend the bill could open up for further watering down, and those line items would be severely impacted. TrailNet is extremely disappointed on two fronts. One, Board Bill 120 does not include any expenditures for driver's education or automated enforcement, items that could reduce destructive driving and speeding on our streets. We hope that in the near future, either through ARPA funding or general revenue, these are addressed. However, we again strongly recommend passage out without amending Board Bill 120. I thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson, for your testimony and for your years of service to the city. Okay, that concludes our public comment on this. If anyone else is out there that didn't get a chance to speak, you can submit your comments in writing, boaclerk@stlewis-mo.gov, boaclerk@stlewis-mo.gov. I know there's going to be amendments to this. The sponsor referenced that. I know the Alderman from the 25th also has amendments. It seems like based on our discussion today, there's some more work to be done on this bill. So we're going to hold this. And Alderman Bosley, I'll defer to you if you want to bring forth a bunch of amendments next week or a committee substitute after you've taken input from your colleagues and the administration. But we're going to hold this bill and we are going to move on to Board Bill number 144, which I believe is the Alderwoman from the 17th Board Bill. Alderwoman Peel, you're recognized.
All right. Thank you, Co-Chair Coder. Let's see. Board Bill 144 is a board bill in which the petitioners are BJC and Watch U. They seek to conditionally vacate airspace on the block of 3888. It's 243 feet away from east of Kings Highway. This request is to support the construction of new wider pedestrian bridge and replace the one that is currently there. This new bridge will better connect the hospital to the garage, and it will also connect some common access points. The construction will be in 2 phases. The new bridge will be built, and when it opens, the old bridge will be taken down. Let's see. I also wanted to mention that there is a speaker who's going to talk more details regarding this bridge.
Thank you, Alderwoman. I see that we've got Mr. Greg Bratcher from BJC signed up. Mr. Bratcher, you're still with us. Hope you're enjoying your day here at the HUD's committee. You want to go ahead and
great work.
Explain to us what this is, expand on what the alderwoman presented.
Sure. Since the 1980s, we've had a pedestrian sky bridge that connects Barnes Jewish Hospital to the garage. We want to replace that. The plan to replace it is building a new bridge next to the old bridge, right next to it, 30 feet away. And the reason for doing that is the #1 design imperative is to always have one bridge open all the time. The reason for that is that we want to always keep pedestrians separated from vehicular traffic. It's just safer that way. It's better for everybody. The bridge will take a year to build, no matter where we build it, and we don't want people crossing at street grade for a year. The new bridge crosses City Street at a slightly different location. So the bill before you today is a bill to grant air rights for that new location. So we've had an air bridge since the 80s. We want to build a new one. We'll tear down the old one when the new is built. We're asking today for air rights.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bratcher. Thank you, Alderwoman. We're going to run down. There are no other speakers signed up to speak on this bill. I'm going to run down members of the committee and see if there's any questions. Alderman Cone, any questions on Board Bill 144?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I just want to be clear, this is only for the air rights. There's not going to be any, are we blocking the street during construction? Can you maybe explain a little bit more in that respect?
Sure. So there will be lane changes during the time, but this is just on that 1 block street from Kings Highway to Euclid. It's known as Barnes Jewish Hospital Plaza, and it is just this street. It is not Kings Highway. It is not any other thoroughfare. So there will be, I think they will try to do things on the weekend and the evenings. But we have as much interest as anyone else in keeping that street open as much as we can.
Okay, one piece of feedback that I've repeatedly had from folks, BJC is not always the best at keeping pedestrian traffic open. I think a lot of that's kind of surfaced during reconstruction efforts along Forest Park Parkway, where oftentimes projects that you all are working on close off the sidewalks. And we've spoken at length this morning about multimodal transit and accessibility and ADA accessibility. And as someone who frequents the Central West End, I've seen it myself with folks that have had to either cross the street or, ride their wheelchairs or, strollers in the middle of Forest Park Avenue because of traffic being closed, the sidewalks being closed due to construction. I would hope that you all are abiding by some of the ordinances that we've passed in the last few years, and that you don't restrict the pedestrian access while undertaking the construction of this project.
No, absolutely. We respect the idea and hear what you're saying, and try very hard to keep the progress of what we're doing in sync with access.
Great.
Hello.
Thank you, Alderman. Anything else, Alderman Cone?
I don't have anything further.
All right, Alderwoman Boyd.
I'm sorry, my computer bouncing back and forth. I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Gunther.
No questions, thank you.
Alderman Narayan.
Just a brief comment. I did have the opportunity to speak with Mr. Bratcher about this. An important, it'll keep pedestrians off the street, also make sure that the nurses and doctors that we've all spent the last couple of years celebrating are not going to be at risk crossing the street at grade there. They did learn from the pandemic that we have, I guess, ongoing, that a pinch point in the hospital was that bridge. And so the new bridge is going to be wider to allow for social distancing if needed again in the future for any reason. And this is one part of a two-part series. There's a companion bill that needs to get through the Streets Department. So if anyone is supportive of this, hopefully they're also supportive of that. And with that, I'll yield, and I'm supportive of this bill.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Todd. Alderwoman Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am well familiar with that bridge that goes from the parking lot to the hospital. I used to deliver flowers there, so I welcome the new development for the new bridge. Can't wait to try it out. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Gross.
No questions for me, thanks.
Alderman Lappy.
No questions, thank you.
Alderwoman Keys.
No questions, thank you.
Alderwoman Walker.
No questions, Mr. Chair, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alderwoman Peel, any closing remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I ask for your favorable consideration to pass this board bill with a do pass recommendation.
Okay, it's been, you want to make that a motion? Do you move to pass the board bill with a do pass recommendation?
I make the motion to pass this board bill with a do pass recommendation. Thank you.
Second.
I heard a lot of seconds, but I see Alderman Cohen's box was green, so we'll go with him as the second. It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th, that we pass Board Bill 144 with a do pass recommendation. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Cone,
Aye.
Alderman Kotar,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Gunther,
Aye.
Alderman Narayan,
Aye.
Alderman Todd, Alderwoman Evans,
Aye.
Alderwoman Peel,
Aye.
Alderman Gross,
Aye.
Alderman Lappy,
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys,
Aye.
Alderwoman Walker,
Aye.
Chair Davis, President Green, still on here? We have 11 aye votes. Oh, did I miss?
Did I vote? I'm an aye.
Oh, I got you.
Oh, did I vote? Okay, I don't know.
Yeah, you did.
All right, by our vote, we've sustained the motion of the Alderman from the 17th and adopted Board Bill 144. Real quick, I want to go back. I see the Alderman from the 3rd has put something in the chat. Alderman, is there somebody else that you had lined up to speak today? I want to be respectful of members of the public on your bill that were here to speak. I went through the entire list that was presented to us, and then anyone who reached out to me individually in the chat saying they didn't make the list. If there's somebody else who has been waiting patiently and would like to speak, I'm happy to allow them the opportunity to do so.
Yes, sir. There has been. So in the last committee hearing and another one, unfortunately, folks, when they sign up, they get turned into panelists. So it's not kind of always just like a sign up list. So what I instructed people to do is come into the meeting. And my idea was the way the meeting was supposed to go with I'm don't know if you have seen the committee sub, but I was gonna go down the line and just allow people to have their chance to speak about their potential project. So, my
Alderman,
apologies.
we're gonna
I
wrap-
never
we're
had a
gonna set
conversation to
that
speak
next
with
week.
you. I
We've
spoke with the
gone through our
chairwoman about it.
speaking-
Yes, sir.
Alderman, we've gone through our speakers list, those that have signed up in accordance with our rules and the directions of the clerk. If there's additional people that wish to speak next week, they'll be recognized. And we can go through the committee sub at that time because there's no committee sub in front of us. And all right, with that, we're going to move
Well, there
on.
was one that was put out. Were you able to look at your Google Drive in the last 2 hours?
Alderman, I have the Google Drive here. If there's a committee sub, it needs to be put forth. I believe it's 24 hours in advance at least, or 48. I don't remember.
But it wasn't necessarily committee sub. We were going to be able to do some things on the floor. I already talked to
Alderman,
our
we're
clerk
not
about
doing
it,
that today.
and I mean not our
Wait till
clerk, but I
next
talked
week.
to
If
our
there's
legal
amendments to
counsel
the
about it.
bill, I
I'm
wanted
sorry.
to be respectful if anyone else had been missed by me or the clerk that had signed up to speak. If people want to sign up to speak at future meetings, they need to do so in accordance with the procedures set forth on our website that the clerk has promulgated. With that, we're going to move on to our final board bill because
Can you
we're
speak to
coming
those
up-
rules real quick so individuals that are here will know what those are, because they're very difficult to find. I sent a bunch of people to the city's website that were not able to go out there and sign up for what it is they like to sign up for. They came here, they've been here since 9 o'clock, sitting here waiting to speak. So with that being said, they still are here. Some folks are acknowledged. We had over 100 people in this meeting today, which we never have in HUD's meetings. These folks were here to sign up and speak about what it is.
Thank you,
that they
Alderman.
believe
And we've
they
had
have
extensive
a chance to do.
testimony. We are now moving up on another board. We have another committee hearing that's scheduled to start at 1 o'clock, and I endeavor to complete this meeting before that 1 o'clock meeting starts. So we're going to move on to our last board bill of the day, Board Bill number 175. Who's handling this? Alderman Gunther?
Got it.
Alderman, you are recognized on Board Bill 175.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice Chair. I can't believe it's really my time here. So anyway, as hopefully we'll get this done as quick as possible. So Board Bill 175, as everyone knows, on November 8th, the citizens and voters of the state of Missouri voted on proposition or Amendment 3. Amendment 3 passed with 53% of voters accepting our state to move towards from medicinal marijuana use to recreational marijuana use. So what our Board Bill 175 does, it basically just takes the existing bill that we had for zoning that was sponsored by the alderman from the 7th. It takes that bill and just changes the wording from being medicinal marijuana use, sales, consumption, manufacturing, everything, and just switches it to comprehensive to allow for the recreational use. So I was working with not only the president's office, but also Frank Oswald, Mary Hart Burton from zoning, Don Rowe, our city councilor department. So our city councilor really was the one that worked with zoning and Mary Hart Burton to go through and change all the language that needed to. I would be happy. I think at one point I had Dylan Mosier here from zoning, but I think after 4 hours, he may have had to go do something else. So that's basically what Board Bill 175 is. It's just a simple zoning rules changes. And one of the things that we are kind of about a time crunch on this because starting, I believe, on February 6th or February 8th, according to Amendment 3, we are allowed to start the recreational sales. And so I am hoping to be able to get this board bill not only out of committee with a due pass recommendation, but then probably tomorrow, Friday, I may ask for a suspend the rules to second read and perfect at the same time, just so that we can make sure to get it in to get this board bill passed before the state of Missouri allows recreational sales to happen. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions. And I don't see Dylan on here. If anyone else does, he can speak.
Thank you, Alderman. And I see Mary Hart Burton signed up to speak. Is Mary with us? I don't see her. I'm not sure we need her. You gave a very succinct explanation of the bill. Let me run through and see if members of the committee have questions. I'm going to start with me, and mine's very simple. Alderman, I know there was a chart in the original medical marijuana bill that sort of outlined the uses, what's permitted, what's conditional, what's prohibited. Are we basically adopting that same chart, but swapping out medical for adult use?
Correct. So it's the same thing. The only thing is instead of medical, we just struck that line. We put comprehensive, switch it out. So yes, so it's basically the exact same thing.
Great. And then in addition to this zoning change, we've also got, I believe I don't remember, it was final pass last week, which is a ballot measure to go to the voters on a 3% tax on the sale of recreational marijuana. Isn't that right?
Correct.
Okay, which is permitted under the amendment. All right, with that, we're gonna go. Dylan is an attendee. Dylan from zoning, you got anything to add? All right, we're gonna go through, take questions. If he joins us, great. If not, we'll just keep moving here. Where is my list? All right, Alderman Cone.
No questions.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Narayan.
No questions, but I would ask that if I could add my name to the bill, please.
So noted.
Thank you. You know, I'd also like to add my name to the bill, and I appreciate the alderman from the 9th getting this thing updated. Alderman Todd. Alderman Evans. Alderwoman Evans.
No questions at this time.
Alderwoman Peel.
No questions.
Alderman Gross.
No questions.
Alderman Lappy.
No questions, thank you.
Alderwoman Keys.
No questions, thank you.
Alderwoman Walker.
You have to unmute.
No questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay. Thank you. With that, the chair will, Alderman Gunther, any closing remarks?
No, I will just mention that chart you're talking about is on page 8. So you can take a look at that. It's identical to what we had under the medicinal use. So with that, I would just like to make a motion that we pass Board Bill 175 out of the committee with a do pass recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by the alderman from the 9th, seconded by the alderman from the 11th, that we pass Board Bill 175 with a do pass recommendation. There's been a request from the previous roll by the alderman from the 25th. Hearing no objection, Board Bill 175 is adopted.
Thank you
Ladies
all.
and gentlemen, I believe that concludes our committee business for the day. We have no resolutions. I don't believe we have any committee discussion, announcements from members of the committee. Sounds like we're going to have a busy week next week. I don't know. I mean, I know we're meeting Thursday and there may be an additional meeting, so stay tuned for that. Excused members, I think at some point
All
everybody
members were present.
Yeah, I think everybody was here today at some point. All right, with that, the Housing, Urban Development and Zoning Committee meeting of January 26th is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be safe out there.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you all.